optimism there carries through to Caterpillar. Also, Apple, part of that same thing as well, 14% upside, and then United Health Group will throw that in the mix. These three are more heavily weighted stocks in the Dow and have contributed double-digit percentage gains, coupled with their high stock prices, have done really well for the Dow, driving those gains to the record levels. If you want to see where the most upside will be, according to data from FactSet, they took a look at the average analyst target price for some of the more heavily weighted Dow components. As you can see here, Boeing, it's had some troubles as of late, has an implied upside of around 13%, the most heavily weighted stock in the Dow. United Health Group up by 14% if analyst target prices are accurate. Goldman Sachs would rise by about 7%, and McDonald's, because of that big drop over the last couple of months, has 19% potential upside if analysts keep their target prices as they are. So, Becky, that's what could drive the Dow. Heavily weighted stocks, some upside here. We'll see if that happens. I'll send things back over to you.
All right, Don, thank you very much. For more on the markets, we're joined right now by Mandy Zhu. She is Chief Equity Derivatives Strategist at Credit Suisse, and Sarat Sethi, who is Managing Partner and Portfolio Manager at Douglas C. Lane and Associates. Sarat, by the way, is also a CNBC contributor. And folks, let's just talk about where the markets stand right now and where we've been expecting them to be. CNBC took a look at 17 strategists and what their equity calls were for the full year. And of those 17, 14 of them have numbers that's below where the market is right now for the year. 14 of them have numbers that are below.
Can't believe that.
We've got almost 2 months left. So does that mean...
The experts?
Yeah, the experts. Does that mean stocks come down from here to meet their expectations, or does that mean these strategists are going to have to raise their numbers? What do you think, sir?
Well, I think this is all going to be predicated on kind of the trade talk. That's going to be really important. If things go as planned and there is actually an agreement, I think they're going to have to raise their numbers, because a lot of what's not built in is earnings that could actually change on the upside because of all the kind of costs that we are all expecting that will probably get taken away, and then you get some revenue upside on it too. So I think today, when you look at the market, it's pretty fairly valued. And if you look at certain sectors like financials, industrials, healthcare, they're cheaper than the market, and that's kind of where the opportunity is. Yes, tech is doing well, but the tech that have real earnings, real cash flow are doing well. So I think the market's bifurcating and saying, look, there's value out there, and I think that's kind of a little rotation, and then momentum is on the companies that are actually doing well and that will continue to do well.
We'll talk about some of the stocks that you like in just a moment, but Mandy, just overall, what do you think the direction of the market is as we head into the end of the year?
Sure, I can tell you in the option market, the positioning is turned very, very constructive, especially into year end. So, and it's actually a very sharp turn, because a month ago when I was on the show, I was talking about there's a lot of demand for hedges. Everyone's very cautious, to the degree that, if historically when you see that much of pessimism in the options market, it actually risks to the upside. And that's exactly what we saw over the past month. Now what we're seeing is complete opposite. So demand for upside calls in the option market went from a 1-year low at the beginning of October to now a 1-year high. And most of these bullish bets are concentrated into year end. So people are certainly playing for continuation of this rally.
So that's where the momentum's headed.
Certainly.
What do you think's driving it?
I think part of it is fundamentally driven, right? So stabilization in economic data, earnings coming in better than feared, trade deal making progress there. But part of it, I think, is also positioning driven, because everyone has been so defensively positioned across hedge funds, across retail. Every client base has been so defensive, right? You talked about the strategy.
We were expecting recession potentially to hit us. And
exactly. So I think no one was positioned for the upside, and therefore they're getting squeezed on the upside. So on our Prime platform, what we're seeing is a lot of short covering, right, over the past month. Not surprisingly, as the market makes new highs. So I think positioning is part of it, but I do think, the majority of it is fundamentally driven.
Why don't I just go home if we're up 22% and then just take everything off the table? We're getting bullish. That's usually a contrarian indicator. Yeah. Would you recommend people doing that?
So the S&P is up 22%.
18 on the Dow.
Yeah, most clients are not. So hedge fund average return for whether you're looking at macro, equity, long, short, etc. Average hedge fund return, high singles, low double digits.
So they're not going to even meet the S&P.
They're trailing significantly, and that's what I'm saying. Like going into year end, if this rally continues, you're going to see upside chasing from that investor base.
And you will see people actually selling down, because there's still a lot of nervousness in this market. So those who have made the 22%, 25% said, I'm going to, it's meeting investor objectives. And I think most professional managers will say, when I've hit my targets or I've hit my clients' objectives, I'll take money off the table. And I think, so you'll see one side is institutions now chasing this rally into year end because they don't want to be out of it. And then you'll see individuals kind of saying, hey, maybe that takes.
Is that 17? Is that a mix of sell side and buy side?
It's the 17 that CNBC follows, 17 forecasters they follow. I'm not sure who they are.
Whether they're buy side or sell side.
I can look into it, find a little more information.
So it's so much better to be sell side. It's like,
Well, there's not much downside. You just say you're wrong.
Well, that's what I mean.
But when you're on our side
they aren't any less shy about giving your
clients will come after you and say, why?
No, they don't. They come after their brokers. And then the guy just goes and moves to another firm and starts, talking out of both sides of his mouth there, usually. But I'm surprised we got him on
17 of them that we track.
14 are wrong.
Yeah. 14 are now below, their price targets are below where the S&P is. Yeah, they're wrong. Yes. If you want to put a fine point on it, they're wrong.
Well, they're not.
They're not right.
They're not bullish enough, obviously.
Right. Well, you've still got, 7 weeks left on the end of the year?
We could be at 2,500. That's what they, but then they'll say,
see, at this point last year, you had the Fed kind of raising rates,
right.
And then you had this big market sell-off. So, people are still fearful of that.
Let's talk about this weird construct of everybody chasing this idea that they have to beat the markets by the end of the year, which is why you're going to see this momentum potentially moving all the way towards the end of the year. What happens January 1st when everybody resets the clock on this dumb, construct of a window that we've set up?
Then I think earnings are going to drive the market again. So right now you might just see more of this momentum. And at that point, the S&P today 17 times earnings. If you do get 18 times, then you will see kind of a little pullback, I think.
So to that point, I say there's a very interesting bifurcation in the option market. I talk about the bullish sentiment, and that's very much going into year end. We are still seeing hedging. So it's not that people are not hedging. They're just hedging further out in terms of maturity. So to your point, there's still a lot of longer term risks, right? Whether it's talking about recession risk, trade deal, whether it's earnings, and of course with the election coming up next year. So there's still a lot of longer term risks out there, and that's what we're seeing hedging just going into year end. There's a little bit of a squeeze going on.
So, Rob, what are some of the names that you do like? What are your favorites?
So in the financials, which I think are the most undervalued, I like JP Morgan. I think Morgan Stanley's a really good buy. Morgan Stanley by itself is trading a little bit over book value, great dividend and moving to wealth management. Blackstone, I think, is a place a lot of people are investing in as an owner of that stock. I think you want to be there. United Health that we mentioned on the healthcare side. And then some of the multinationals, the blue chip multinationals like Honeywell, like Microsoft. I think you're not going to go wrong owning those companies, especially if you see global growth coming back.
What do we need to watch for? What are the risks that you kind of have out there on the table? I guess trade war is front and center. That's number one.
Yeah, I think certainly, if the manufacturing weakness spills into the consumer sector, I think you're going to see a resurgence of the recession fears, recession talk. On the upside, I would keep an eye on Europe, right, and the potential for fiscal stimulus there. It's very much a tail risk, but there are some political catalysts coming up in Germany that I would watch for. If we get a change in the governing coalition there, and we see a coalition with the Green Party, which is very much pro-stimulus, pro-government spending, that could be a big tailwind for that region.
And there's zero option to that right now because this has happened so often in Europe. We've had so many years, but if that does happen, and hence the multinational exposure, because corporates that have global exposure are going to do well for that.
Okay, great. Mandy, thanks for coming in. It's great to see you.
Always great to be here.
And Sarat, he's going to be sticking with us for the rest of this hour.
Coming up, our big interview of the morning, Boeing Chairman David Calhoun will join us live starting at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Then later in the show, co-founder of private equity powerhouse Carlyle Group, Leslie Picker, live from the Greenwich Economic Forum, David Rubenstein. Squawk Box coming right back.
I'm 52, but in my mind, I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Week is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole in one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. Already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cozy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at aerlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
Stuck in traffic during the big game? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to your favorite NFL team on the go. No TV required. Even during rush hour, you won't miss a single touchdown. Listen to the NFL on TuneIn Premium today.
At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with Fox's full lineup of shows. Plus, when news breaks, Fox has you covered with live updates and expert analysis on the biggest developing stories. Listen to Fox News Talk anytime on TuneIn.
Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has found himself in a new war words with Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who's calling on voters to back him with a pledge to get Brexit sorted in 6 months if he becomes Prime Minister. CNBC's Wilfred Frost joins us now from London. Wilfred, you spoke with former Prime Minister Tony Blair about Brexit. He's a big Remainer, I know. But what do you say, Wilf?
I did indeed, Joe. Good morning to you. And just last week, President Trump weighed into the upcoming UK election, expressing clear preference for Boris Johnson over Jeremy Corbyn. I asked Blair whether a US president should be doing that.
I should imagine Jeremy Corbyn was probably pleased, because if you're looking at this from a Labour Party perspective or an anti-conservative perspective, you know, Donald Trump obviously is quite a divisive figure here as well as back in the US. And, you know, his attack on Jeremy Corbyn, I should think, will not trouble Jeremy Corbyn very much.
You built a very close relationship with both presidents during your tenure and stuck by President Clinton through thick and thin, including during his own impeachment proceedings. As impeachment proceedings loom large for President Trump, should that influence how close a relationship that the UK Prime Minister builds with the US?
No, I think you've got to let US politics... Look, everyone's politics is weird right now. I mean, what happens is, wherever you go anywhere in the world and leaders start talking to each other, you get into a competition as to whose politics is crazier. Now, I always say to people, I think we're ahead. But, you know, it's a lot of people are competing to catch up with us. So, you know, no, whatever happens in US politics, leave that to the US. The relationship between the UK Prime Minister and the US President should always be strong. I mean, one thing I will never criticize Boris Johnson for, even though I disagree with him passionately about Brexit, is having a close relationship with the US President. This is necessary for both our countries.
Tony Blair there, and coming up at 10:30 a.m., Jamie Dimon, and later on Closing Bell, Melody Hobson. Guys, back to you.
Well, we can't wait to see it. What else did you ask the Prime Minister about, the former Prime Minister, that really caught your attention?
Well, he had a very, very clear view that negative rates were a bad idea. In terms of how Brexit may or may not play out, he admitted that if Boris Johnson wins a majority in the upcoming election, then Brexit would indeed be carried out. He still, of course, hopes that Boris Johnson won't get a majority and there might be some kind of route towards a second referendum. I would say he didn't sound that confident of getting that outcome, which, of course, is his desired outcome.
All right, well, thank you. Great interview. We look forward to the other big interviews you have coming up later today. In the meantime, when Squawk Box returns, Bruin Sports Capital announcing a major partnership to build one of the biggest sports and entertainment companies, providing fans the experience that they're looking for. Bruin Sports Capital CEO George Pine will join us right after this break.
Coming up, he's faced challenges at General Electric and Caterpillar, and now finds himself at the center of one of the most critical crises in corporate history. Boeing Chairman David Calhoun joins Squawk Box for an exclusive interview. His thoughts on the company's handling of the grounding of the 737 MAX and what he's hearing from executives at major airlines. That interview is straight ahead, right here on Squawk Box.
I don't like the idea of my broker taking the opposite.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 74 billion. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £74 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This weekend, Volvo are offering 0% APR finance on a Volvo Select approved used car, which means this weekend, 0% of people will visit their in-laws. So, visit your local Volvo retailer this weekend and drive home an approved used car with 0% APR finance. Oh, and please send our apologies to the in-laws.
Available on used vehicles up to 4 years old, participating retailers. 50% minimum deposit on minimum finance amount of £7,000. Conditional sale, terms and conditions apply. Finance subject to status, 18 plus. Guarantee may be required. Volvo Car Financial Services.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Bruin Sports Capital announcing today a partnership with CVC Capital Partners and the Jordan Company. Joining us now to talk the mega investment in sports business news is George Pine, founder and CEO of Bruin Sports Capital. And these partnerships will provide you with more money to do whatever it is you're going to do with it, $600 million. But what's on the plate? What do you not have that you want to do?
Well, we're investing behind the change in media consumption in sports. So,
this
everything we do is behind that change.
Not gambling.
Not gambling. It's the change in how people consume content, and that can be design companies, that can be activation companies, streaming companies, technology. That's what we've done, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
What would it take for you to try to tap into this the new environment in this country with gambling?
Well, gambling's an interesting category, but it's very competitive.
Is it?
A lot of capital sloshing around, and so I have the investment threshold of a 100-year-old man. So for me, it's a little too risky.
I want you to guess on Saturday how many games I bet on.
A lot.
Games.
You know, you're not
9 games. Who bets on? Why would I bet on 9 games? And I was 5-4.
Because you're an avid sports fan, and
I've gotten more avid from this. Though.
Exactly, and that's going to be great for sports. You're 19 times more likely to watch a game if you bet on it. Makes every game more relevant.
It does.
And by the way, a boring game is exciting because you can bet on a quarter, a half, how a player does. It connects people to sports better than before.
6 NFL games. I was 4 out of 6.
That's pretty good.
I even had the Ravens.
You know, I tell my kids, you never see the casinos go broke. So
I know. After 3 months, I'm down $100 on my 500.
I can think of a couple that have.
People have saying that's great to still be in the game every week.
That's right.
To still be. So what? Explain exactly what are the most exciting things that Bruin is doing right now.
Well, right now we're streaming, as an example, NFL games in 181 countries. We work with FIFA, UEFA, the Premier League, all in digital and social media. So we're in the midst of the change, and we're investing behind the change. And so it's an exciting time to be in sports because people are consuming content so much differently. And I don't see that's becoming more, not less, going forward.
Is the opportunity bigger globally than here?
It's a big opportunity globally. So we right now do business in 18 countries, and with CVC, with offices in 25 countries, and Jordan CVC with a global track record. What today's announcement means, in addition to having more capital, is we really have global capability. It enhances our chops and will accelerate our growth.
Did the NCAA go far enough, do you think, just as an aside?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, right? What it's going to mean is there are going to be new categories that were dormant because you didn't have player rights, and they're going to make them alive. But it's going to really be a narrow group of players that are going to get the money, and it's going to create more challenges in basketball. Think about Zion. If he had a $2 million a year endorsement deal, maybe he doesn't go pro. What if LeBron, would he go pro, or would he make $10 million and go to college? So basketball, where one or two players can have a big impact, it's going to make a change. Lastly, recruiting. So what's an endorsement and what's a recruiting stipend? So that Alabama car dealer, when they're talking to that young man, is it an endorsement or is it recruiting? So what do the rules do to change the competitive balance and separate does the gap between the haves and have-nots increase? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It remains to be seen what the true impact will be.
I mean, you are sports is the last bastion of the non-DVR or non. So don't ruin. Don't. I mean, you have a big responsibility to do this right. You must think a lot about that. I mean, unbelievable opportunity.
The competitive balance in college and what these rules changes mean to me is a $64 question.
Is that it for you? Yeah, that's what.
That's a big. It's a big issue. It's a challenge.
We've got the chairman of Boeing coming up, so we'll have you back. I love talking about this. So I'd like to talk to you about Alabama LSU. And don't you think Alabama is going to win that game?
I don't know. Alabama's very good, but so is LSU.
I know, but I saw LSU, and they didn't cover the spread when I had LSU. I think it was against Auburn, so I'm tainted. I think that was
that quarterback at LSU is pretty.
I know, possible Heisman. I think that the Ohio State guy should give it to a defensive player.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, George, thank you. Okay, Matt. Okay, take it easy. When we return, the interview of the morning. Boeing Chairman David Calhoun and Phil LeBeau are getting ready for our news-making exclusive interview. I bet we'd take a shot on them. There they are. We'll get some answers.
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll get some answers on the 737 MAX, what he's hearing about the future of Dennis Muhlenberg. It's a big half hour. Stay with us.
Ameriprise wants to know what's important to you.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hello, Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality, I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
There's It's Bonfire Night happy. Listening to Headbangers happy. There's no traffic on the M1 happy. Bonfire and fireworks tonight happy. There's only 50 days until Christmas happy. It's almost lunchtime happy. Getting your tyres changed over your lunch break with a free coffee happy. You get that kind of happy from QuickFit in Watford. Book online now at quickfit.com and drive away happy. Terms and conditions apply.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. It's time for our Newsmaker of the Morning, Boeing Chairman Dave Calhoun. The Dow component, as you know, separated its CEO and chairman roles amid the 737 MAX crisis, naming Calhoun as chairman on October 11th. It's been relatively quiet since then in terms of on-camera interviews. This morning, he's speaking out in a Squawk Box exclusive. Dave joins us now with our own Phil LeBeau at CNBC Global Headquarters. Phil, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Calhoun.
Good morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe.
And I know you guys have a number of questions for Dave. And Dave, let's begin first off. You and I were talking before you came out here.
Yeah.
Big question right off the bat is about the compensation for Dennis Muhlenberg. This came up on Capitol Hill. You have some news regarding how that's going to be changing, correct?
Yeah, I do. Of course, it was sort of obvious to everyone that was an uncomfortable question for Dennis. Dennis doesn't like to speak in behalf of board activities. Anyway, Dennis called me Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, with the purpose of suggesting that he not take any compensation for 2019 as in the form of bonuses, which is, of course, most of your compensation. It came in 2 fronts. 1, no long-term bonus, and 3, no consideration for equity grants until the MAX in its entirety is back in the air and flying safely. As you know, MAX in its entirety takes us through all of the next calendar year and probably into the beginning of 2021. So it was a significant move on his part. Nothing surprising about that for me, nothing. Dennis's character always does the right thing. Dennis was very uncomfortable in that situation. And Dennis, more than anything, walked out of the evening in between the 2 hearings where he listened for several hours to every story that the victims' families presented to him. Changed him for life. He was doing all the right things, but now he's gotten his core, he's gotten his bones, and it had an enormous impact.
Enormous impact, but you know that people are watching you right now saying, why is Dennis Muhlenberg still CEO of Boeing?
Yeah, because from the vantage point of our board, Dennis has done everything right from the beginning. Remember, Dennis didn't create this problem, but from the beginning, he knew that MCAS should and could be done better, and he has led a program to rewrite MCAS to alleviate all of those conditions that ultimately beset 2 unfortunate crews and the families and victims. And he's done that incredibly well. He manages it every single day. He keeps the board abreast of everything that happens every day. And he's done that well. And he has set us up for a return to service. Because I will remind everybody, return to service starts the day it's certified. It's not over when it's certified. There's no victory in that, right? We have to get the airplanes that our customers have put on the ground. We have to get them back in the air. We have to assist them every step of the way. And we have to get the airplanes that we've built and are ready for delivery to customers back in the air as well. That's a long program. It's at least a year, and it's a tough, important task, and we believe he's up to it.
Joe, I know you have a question for Dave.
Yeah, going back to the compensation issue, Dave. So that takes care of this last incident. But is there anything being changed by the board about clawback provisions for something other than fraud or whatever you normally put in that in the bylaws there, which would cover reputational damage, or which would then cover safety issues, because safety issues are notoriously hard to have a clawback provision for, because it's unintentional and we know things happen. This is a high-risk business and everything else. But if it was reputational, I think that would be a way of making that permanent for the next situation, and if, God forbid, if there is one at Boeing.
So, Joe, the provisions around clawback, first of all, let me just say we're not looking for a clawback on Dennis, and there is nothing at any stage anywhere that suggests there's culpability involved in any of that. With respect to those provisions, there's no doubt we'll take a look at that. There's no question. Everything related to safety and its impact on compensation and many other facets of the operations of our company will be turned over, looked at hard, and many revisions will be made. So I don't want to predict the outcome, but you can be sure we'll look at it.
It's been reported that, I don't know how many engineers are on the board of Airbus, but I know that there's fewer at Boeing right now. Your career, you're all over the place at GE. I don't know whether you need an engineering degree, but you've got a lot of manufacturing expertise, obviously. Muhlenberg is an aerospace engineer, so that's one, which makes me think maybe this is a guy that you want here right now, in spite of everything that happened last week, in spite of what happened in the last 8-10 months, whatever it is. This is a guy you want, but do you need more engineers on the board at a company like Boeing?
I don't believe we do. I think we have an incredibly diverse board. It's very strong. Everybody has a view and an opinion. We tap into it. I personally tap into it on a very, very frequent basis, not just in board meetings, but individually. The safety committee chair, Admiral Giambastiani, who I believe is just one of the terrific leaders, he has led an effort to study, look at, bring outside experts in to look at all of our safety practices across the Boeing commercial and broadly across the whole company. And we have embarked on a program that will make significant changes to all of that. And I think he's doing it the right way. And just one last comment, Joe. You may recall in my life at leadership in the aviation business at GE, where we built the engines on the airplane. I joined that business 10 years after a horrific accident in Sioux City in 1989. That accident, all of the major changes that occurred inside of GE and the way we stood up safety practices ultimately created independence with our engineering organization and visibility right down to the nooks and crannies of the company. All of that was present when I joined 10 years later, and everybody referred to it. That's what's going to happen in this company. That's exactly the path we're going to have to take.
But Muhlenberg, that is an asset.
He is an asset.
So you think he'll be here in a year, Dave? Or I've seen people say once it's back in the air, 6 months later, maybe there's a change.
Yeah, and why speculate on that? You know how difficult and how big the program is and remains through the course of the next year, right? If we successfully get from where he started to where we need to end up, I would view that as a very significant milestone and something that speaks to his leadership and his courage and his ability to execute and get us through this. And yes, the board deliberates every single meeting on the subject of our leaders and how well they're doing and do they have our confidence. And to date, and as recently as Sunday evening, he has our confidence.
Dave, there had been a lot of news reports in the last month that said that you were brought in to kind of manage strained relationships between Dennis Muhlenberg and the board. How would you react to that characterization?
Yeah, I don't. That's a false characterization. Dennis has a relationship with all of our board members. He talks to them. They each bring a sort of a special skill to him. My appointment of chairman was very much about division of duty. And that experience I brought from my aviation days and what I think is the significant overhauls that have to go on inside our company to increase visibility on the subject of safety straight up to the board and right down to the bottom of the organization and create more independence in the functions that represent safety.
Do you and Dennis see eye to eye on what has to happen to get the MAX program back in the air and approved by regulators around the globe?
Yes, we do. And I think, honestly, I think Dennis appreciates this help.
Dave, I'm curious. A lot of people will hear this, and they'll hear that the board is deliberating or meeting on a regular basis, discussing this. But there are a lot of people who look at the board over the last year and say, what have you guys been doing? Why haven't you done more sooner? Were you too slow to act as a board?
Well, no one's ever going to claim that they were fast enough. And I'm not going to be the last person to say that. But I will say this has been one very active board. Between Indonesia and Ethiopia, roughly 4 months, very tough time. Just trying to get everything we can out of the NTSB investigation or the Indonesian equivalent of that, learn the facts, understand what has to get done. Fairly early on, that assumption, that deadly assumption around what a pilot would do in that circumstance when that boundary condition was tested, that started to come to light. There's no question about that. Ethiopia happens, everything changes, and our board is in full gear, and me included. We went down to the engineering organizations with a new safety committee that at that time we didn't know if it was permanent or temporary, but we were on with it. What we learned in that committee is the process they undertook to make the decisions and ultimately surfacing that flawed assumption. And anyway, it was sort of clear to us, no one was hiding anything. It was a set of engineering decisions that ended up being wrong. And our job now is to make sure that whatever processes we have, whatever process our regulator has, that those processes never allow for this to happen again. That assumption, just because history suggested it was a great assumption, just because history and the record suggested that, turned out it wasn't right, and we have to test that every day.
But Representative DeFazio last week, you were watching the hearings. He said, look, there was an email that was sent from a Boeing chief technical pilot that Dennis Muhlenberg and some of the executives were aware of. That essentially brought to light this question of whether or not executives were aware of concerns with MCAS. Was the board aware of that before the Ethiopia crash?
Let me separate the IM. First of all, the IM was discovered and turned over to the authorities that we were meant to turn it over to. The question you're asking is when it was written. Was it surfaced then as a concern? Was it fleshed out? Is there a broad culture question? The answer is it wasn't. Do we wish it had? Yes. Would it have resulted in something different around that assumption that went wrong? I'm not so sure of that. I would hope that it would, but none of that happened. So our job is to make sure that it will happen. I do not believe that instance, that isolated instance, is indicative of a culture problem. I have not seen that in the many touches that I have had.
And because that yesterday, Representative DeFazio and Representative Larson, they sent a letter to the rest of the committee, and they essentially said there's a culture of concealment, of not being 100% up front when it comes to safety.
Yeah, and I just don't see that. I don't believe it. I have many touch points inside Boeing. I always have. That question of culture and anybody's willingness to trade safety against anything else, never seen it, never touched it, don't believe it. Now, don't confuse that. Our culture on this subject can get better. We can do more with visibility. Everybody knows that. We can strengthen all the independent arms that are meant to put judgment against every decision in favor of safety. We can strengthen those. We can increase sort of the authority across the company. And those are the steps that we are going to take.
Joe?
Dave, in your view, what's the right balance between a company and its employees and the cooperation with regulators in the FAA? Obviously, I can't imagine the FAA trying to certify something without a close working relationship with the company, and yet if it's too close, then you figure that maybe the FAA is doing Boeing's bidding for it. So how do you get that balance right from here on out? Because that's going to be something that people look at closely.
That's a great question. That definitely came up in the hearings. I just don't want anybody to be confused. Reform will happen. Reform has to happen. The system let everybody down. I totally understand that. Delegation of authority over a fairly lengthy period of time has delivered incredibly strong results. The safety record demonstrates that. And the involvement of the most technical of the team at Boeing, their involvement in that process is a good one. If a rebalancing has to happen by way of reform, so be it. So be it. I get that. I think both the FAA and ourselves will look hard at all of these practices. We will attempt to improve them on our own, and we will encourage reform at every turn, all in the name of safety.
Hey, Dave, we have had people, analysts and others who have come on the show and defended Boeing, saying that, look, they think a big part of the problem with this was a lack of pilot training in some of these incidents. Do you think that this was a situation where pilot training wasn't up to snuff, or was this an actual problem with the MCAS system and the design?
Becky, there were a lot of contributing causes. Our job is to fix MCAS and make sure whatever inputs ultimately come about in that cockpit at that moment do not create pandemonium. There is no question the fundamental assumption we designed around was flawed with respect to how a pilot would react. And that's our job, is to fix that assumption and work with that man-machine interface with all of our customers and all of the regulatory authorities around the world. If you ask me, that is the center of the issue that has to be addressed as we go forward and develop every next new airplane.
Dave, I know the sensors were, you had to put trust in that the MCAS was reading. There have been people that said that pilots aren't even flying planes anymore. Is there too much automation at this point? If a pilot was actually more involved with the takeoff than just relying on software and automated systems, would the same thing have happened? Do these guys fly planes anymore?
Well, I can't answer the second part because it's speculative in nature. Pilots do fly airplanes less and less in terms of controlling them in flight. But I do think we're past sort of that moment. We are going to have to deploy automation. We are going to have to ultimately almost make these airplanes fly on their own. Make no mistake, I wouldn't want to get on an airplane without that pilot. Their judgment, their behavior at moments of critical importance that's why I get on an airplane. So forget my life at Boeing. And so we're going to do everything in our power to make their job easier, and it will likely increase the level of automation in the cockpit.
What's Boeing's relationship with the new head of the FAA? He seemed like he was irritated with the company, at least in recent weeks, based on some of the release of some of the information that had gone to the criminal investigation, but not necessarily to the FAA. Can you tell us what the latest development is in that and your latest conversations?
Well, Dennis appropriately apologized for that situation. Nobody's happy about that. He's exercising his independence as a regulator, so I don't even want to suggest there is a relationship. Our respect for the role he is in and our respect for the judgments he has to make over the next month or two. I don't want to suggest we have one. He's doing his work. He's doing it the right way, and he's going to listen to everybody inside his regulatory authority. And make sure that everyone is comfortable that this airplane is, in fact, as safe as we believe it is.
Dave, let me ask you about the airlines, your customers. Gary Kelly, CEO of Southwest, was on our air not long ago, and he's very upset. I mean, he came out and said, I'm not happy with Boeing at all, and they are going to consider looking at Airbus as a possibility to fly in the future. But you guys have been two peas in a pod since they started in 1967. Yep. When he said that, what did you think?
I said sort of good for Gary. Gary I've known for a very long time. He's a fantastic CEO. He's objective about everything. We have let him down. There's no question we have let him down. He was entirely dependent on the Boeing company and the 737 fleet. He has confidence in that fleet. He does. He knows it has served him well, and he knows it has served him safely. But this gap where he needs capacity and it's not there is a real problem for him. Anybody at that moment in time has to make the decision that we're going to consider other alternatives. I get that. So we're going to have to step up to the plate if and when that day happens and put our best foot forward. And we're going to have a MAX back in the air that's flying safely, maybe safer than any airplane that's ever flown.
Does that mean even greater compensation? In other words, cutting the price on the plane?
Compensation is that's a decision way long out from now. Right now, we are focused on getting this airplane back in the air. We price airplanes against our competition. We always intend to win, and we always sell value in the process. I don't think anything will change about that.
Becky?
Dave, do you still anticipate that the 737 MAX program will be approved, the new program approved by at least one regulator, and it will be back in the air by the end of the year, at least somewhere in the world?
So I'll reiterate a very important point and a ground rule that everyone set early on inside Boeing. The regulator will make that decision. So I want to state that right up front, and we are going to support everything they do and cross every T and dot every I in the process. Right now, that schedule suggests that what you just said will happen, that in fact our airplane will get certified, and as we turn the year, we can begin to move forward on getting these back in the air. But again, subject always to the FAA's schedule.
Did you want to cut production any further? There's been reports that you have been an advocate for saying either shut down production altogether on the MAX or bring it down even lower than 42 per month. Have you been an advocate for that?
I've been an advocate for stability. And so the planned increases, now if you'll recall back when these accidents happened and immediately following Ethiopia, I had an objective to take the pressure off the company in every way I could think of. And one of them was to create some stability on the 737 MAX line. At that time, we were running at a fairly low rate, 42, relative to what we were predicting. But my advice, and by the way, this wasn't a debate, accepted readily by the team, was yes, we're going to stay at 42. And why stay at 42? Why not drop to 30? Well, because there's stability involved in our workforce and skills and knowledge that we want to stay the course. We want to hurt those folks. We don't want to bump through the union lines. None of that works for us or works for the airplane or works for the name of safety. So we have worked very hard to keep that stable and steady for as long as we can. And we have looked at our balance sheet and all the credit issues that you face in doing so every step of the way. Every month there's a rigor around evaluating that. And our hope, our desire is that we get the certification, we get return to service, and we never have to move off that number.
Joe?
Hey, Dave, the 737 MAX is so important to Boeing. I can't imagine that there'd be a successor airline in the works anytime really, really soon. This needs to be salvaged and saved, obviously. Will people a year or two from now say, yeah, I'm flying on a 737 MAX, and it will be called a 737 MAX? There's no plans to change the name of it, and it will be a proud brand for Boeing eventually, reputationally. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. The entire company's dedicated to that. Your question started with a phrase I would never use, which is salvage. That's not what this is. That's not what this is.
Okay.
This airplane has been updated several times over the course of its tenure out there, always with the latest technology and safety requirements in mind. So it is a modern airplane, and this control system will be fixed, and it will be safe, and it will have been tested like no other control system, at least in my history in the aviation industry. And this airplane will fly, and it will be safe. And I'll fly it, and my family will fly it. And the only way to win a brand back is not to advertise it or to talk about it, but to win it with every next flight and every touch.
It will be called the MAX.
It will be called the MAX.
No plans to change the name. Okay.
No.
Jim Cramer is tweeting, Dave, and he points out something that Doug Parker from American Airlines has told him recently, that Boeing, he thinks, owes his company hundreds of millions of dollars. Also says that those costs should be borne by Boeing shareholders, not by Americans. What's your response to that?
Well, there's no question there will be settlements, and Doug's right, and Doug's been very clear with me on that front as well as every other CEO that's been affected. So there's no question there will be a fair number of settlements, and yes, our company and our balance sheet has provided for what we think that resolution will be. So there's a lot of work between here and there to resolve that, but yeah, we understand that, and Doug's right, and we intend to satisfy him.
Do you think your company is getting drawn into the trade talks and now potentially used as a pawn in what's happening between China and the United States right now?
Well, I certainly hope not, and I'm going to operate under the premise that it will not. Trade is a completely separate discussion. It's big and it's important to the Boeing company long term, but in no way, shape, or form should anything get in the way of the subject of safety and the recertification effort.
Dave, we don't have much time left, but one last question we have for you is, I think there is a perception that the board, you talk every once in a while, not every month, but every couple of days. How often does the board talk? How often are you guys saying, here's where we stand on the MAX, here's what needs to be done?
I don't think a week goes by where I haven't talked to at least 2 or 3 board members, at least. To gain perspectives, to inform them, to make sure that we are up to date on everything. Reminder, every day we get an update, a complete update on the status of the MAX and what's happening with the software development, release, approval, certification, et cetera. So this is a very involved board. Admiral Giambastiani, who has led our safety efforts and drive deep into the company, he's done an amazing job. You'd think he was working full-time on this. I think most of our team believe he is, and we thank him for that service. This is a very involved board. It's doing its very best to cope with a very difficult situation. We are not trying to rewrite history. We are simply trying to take every next half step forward the right way.
Joe?
Yeah, Dave, Boeing, for years, one of the most respected names in the world, respected companies. And you worked with Jim McNerney for a long time. And those, I don't know whether I'd call them the glory years at Boeing, but obviously he had a very successful tenure. Is Muhlenberg capable of, do you think, returning Boeing to those days? Did Boeing lose a step when it lost McNerney? Or I know that's a tough thing to ask, but go ahead.
Yeah, let's just talk. There were 2 very different eras, and you may remember that when Jim came in as CEO, he came in under dire circumstance based on a serious compliance issue in the defense side of our business. And he brought our company back from that, and he did it really, really well. This situation's very different. Dennis came to us highly qualified. He is an engineer. That is helpful. But he also ran big businesses inside Boeing. He knows how to design airplanes. He delivers airplanes, and he has provided them safely to his customers, and he responds to them when he's asked questions. So he came in qualified, and now he is going to experience in his first period one of the most difficult situations any CEO that I've ever known has lived through. So if he can get us from here to the end point, and the end point being a MAX that's flying in service and accepted by the flying public and begins to restore our brand, I might argue he's just about the most qualified executive in the world to be running a company like Boeing. So all of us have been through that CEO chair know how tough and gritty these experiences are. We're going to support Dennis through this process, and I hope when we get to the end of this, and we're not going to project when we get or how we get, but if we get there the way I think we will, Dennis is going to be one highly qualified CEO.
All right, we're going to leave it. We're going to leave it there. Dave Calhoun, Chairman of Boeing, thank you very much for the extended interview. Phil LeBeau, thank you very much for bringing it to us from CNBC headquarters. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, reaction to that interview and Mr. Calhoun's comments. Check out the futures at this hour, now up 63 points or so.
Sarat, thanks for coming in.
Oh, Sarat, thank you. Yes, thank you too. I'm sorry. Squawk Box will be right back.
Still to come, co-founder David Rubenstein talks corporate leadership, private equity, and activist investing. He's our special guest at the top of the hour. Squawk Box will be right back.
Yeah, I can
consulted with your grandmother's doctor.
I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole in one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Cold Tuesday afternoons like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead, killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Rainy, 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 rainy.
Sergey, why are you in such good mood?
It's raining.
And?
Rain means we take meerpups to cinema. And cinema means they'll be entertained.
Ah, and entertained means they're also quiet for a couple of hours. Oh, let's go. Enjoy more time together with 2-for-1 cinema tickets from Meerkat Movies with the Meerkat app. When you buy, so compare the markup.
Qualifying purchases, Tuesdays or Wednesdays, participating cinemas, 2 standard tickets only, cheapest free. T's and C's apply.
A Squawk Box exclusive. We just heard from Boeing Chairman Dave Calhoun. Now Wall Street reacts.
All right, all-time highs. The Dow finally joins the S&P 500 and NASDAQ in record territory. We will talk to hedge fund titan Keith Meister, the Meister, on where stocks go from here.
And the state of the economy. 1 year away from the 2020 election. Carlyle Group co-founder David Rubenstein joins us with the biggest risks and the biggest opportunities. The final hour of Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning and welcome back to Squawk Box here on CNBC Live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Joe Kerner along with Becky Quick. Andrew is off today. He's got big things going on with the Deal Book
That's tomorrow.
Conference tomorrow, and what a lineup. But we'll probably show you a little bit later. U.S. equity futures at this hour are indicated higher, and they've actually gotten a little better. Boeing shares in the Dow up about 3.5 points. Now we're watching that after the extended interview with new chairman David Calhoun. I don't know if it's a high-priced stock. Market check on it right now, given the interview up about 1%.
As Joe mentioned, we just heard from Boeing's chairman, Dave Calhoun, in an exclusive interview right here on Squawk Box. Phil LeBeau's back. He has the highlights from that. And Phil, there were many highlights, but probably the most important news coming out of this, that Calhoun and the board are standing by CEO Dennis Muhlenberg and talking a little bit about what Muhlenberg himself asked the board to do in terms of compensation.
Right, Becky. Dave Calhoun was emphatic that the board is behind Dennis Muhlenberg remaining as CEO of Boeing. But as you know, last week when Mr. Muhlenberg was on Capitol Hill, there were more than a few senators and representatives who said, why are you being paid? Why are you still CEO? And we asked Dave Calhoun right off the bat, what is going to happen with the future of Dennis Muhlenberg at Boeing. Here's what he had to say about Dennis's compensation.
Dennis called me Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, with the purpose of suggesting that he not take any compensation for 2019 as in the form of bonuses, which is, of course, most of your compensation. It came in two fronts. One, no long-term bonus, and three, no consideration for equity grants until the MAX in its entirety is back in the air and flying safely. As you know, MAX in its entirety takes us through all of the next calendar year.
Now, I don't have all of Dennis Muhlenberg's compensation information from last year, but I know, Becky, we looked into this last week. I believe he was compensated to the tune of about $23 million last year. About 13 or 14 million of that, if I'm not mistaken, was in the form of long-term compensation, stock grants, etc. So if you listen to what Dave Calhoun is saying here, Dennis Muhlenberg has said, no stock grants for me for 2019, none until this plane is back in full service, which is, as he mentioned, likely not going to happen until the end of 2020. So there will be a substantial pay cut for Dennis Muhlenberg as long as he remains CEO of Boeing, at least through the end of next year.
All right, Phil, stay right there. We're going to continue to discuss this. Joining us for more on that is Josh Sullivan, who's analyst at Seaport Global Securities. Also, Seth Kaplan, who's aviation journalist at Kaplan Research. And Josh, let's start with you. What did you think of what Calhoun had to say?
You know, I mean, the reality is with some of the delays and the starts with, the MAX returning to service here over the last year, stakeholders in Boeing, be it shareholders, airlines, eventual passengers, needed to see a change. And Calhoun brings that. I think you saw on display there, an effective toolkit of public relations, taking on a lot of these complex issues, breaking them down item by item, while also instilling confidence in the existing Boeing engineering and infrastructure, getting people to and from space on a regular basis. So I think that, showing that separation, allowing Dennis to do what he needs to do on the engineering side, focusing on working with the regulators, Calhoun provides that separation. And, I think he did an effective job there.
Seth, what did you think? I mean, the narrative kind of got away from the company last week with the hearings in front of Congress. What do you think of what Calhoun just did? Does it turn the focus back, or is this a train that's going to keep on running?
Well, I thought he did a good job with the interview. Great job, by the way, by Phil and you two. Made news, obviously, by not only standing behind Dennis Muhlenberg, but by talking about what's going to happen with his compensation. I just think Boeing, at every step of the way, has been a little bit behind, and you just wish that they could sort of see where things are going and get ahead of something in terms of the news cycle. The whole, the question about compensation, I don't know how they couldn't imagine that was going to come out that last week. And I mean, how much better would it have been for him to just be able to answer the question, yes, I've given up something, than to stumble like he did. So yeah, great job this morning. I just hope that, they're working with everybody there in terms of communications teams as well to sort of envision the next thing like that and get ahead of it, because they haven't done a very good job of that.
Hey, Phil, what are the next steps? What do we watch from this point?
A lot of this now is coming down to the certification process, Becky. There are a number of software validation steps that need to take place, I would say, over the next 3 to 4 weeks, including having line pilots from a number of airlines from around the world get in the simulator with the new MCAS software. They're basically going to validate that this system is working the way that Boeing believes it will effectively work in the future now that the fixes have been made. After that is a certification flight, likely either the end of November, might even slip into early December. And then you've got the head of the FAA, Steve Dickson, has said, I'm going to fly this plane. Because remember, he's a certified pilot. I want to fly this plane before I sign off on this. That'll likely happen sometime in early to mid-December. And it's possible we could see the FAA sign off on this by December 31st. It's a small and tight window, but there are many, including those within the FAA, who say, look, Boeing can make it depending on what happens with each of these steps.
So, Phil, the software fix, I mean, the MCAS is still going to be part of the
yes.
Of the navigation system, right?
Correct.
Do you still
Is it easier to disengage? Does the software do that for you?
Well, there's a number of steps that they've made. We're not going to get too technical here, Joe, but a number of the steps. One of the big issues that was at the heart of the two accidents is that MCAS was originally designed to take information from one angle of attack sensor instead of two. And remember, it was a flawed sensor for both of these crashes that led to the pilots, saying, why is the plane continually pitching lower? Second, the new MCAS will fire once, where it lowers the nose just once. Previously, it was going off every 10 to 15 seconds, which imagine if you were the pilot of either the Lion Air or the Ethiopian Airlines, and you didn't realize that this system was going to fire every, 30 seconds, however long it is. That is not going to happen in the future.
Right. So the sensor was indicating it needed to fire. So it was a faulty sensor.
And they only took it from data from one sensor, Joe, and that's going to change now. It'll be redundant.
But if it needs to be pushed down, you'd want it to fire more than once, wouldn't you? I don't...
Well, then now you're getting into every scenario. I mean, look, the problem is that the sensor kept on telling the MCAS system the wrong information, so MCAS kept on pushing it down, and the pilots were going, wait a second, we're trying to pull this up, and the system keeps pushing it down.
But you still need the MCAS, though.
Which gets back, though, to the core problem that a lot of people have pointed to, which is pilot training. Seth, let's talk a little bit about pilot training and what that may mean. Part of the advantage to the 737 MAX was, even though this was a differently designed airplane, had moved the engines, they were selling it as something that didn't need to come along with a lot of pilot training, or basically any pilot training, because it was still the same 737 program.
And that was
what happens in the future.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of MCAS, was to make this plane feel like the old plane. You're right. This is an airplane, let's face it, that Boeing didn't really want to build. It preferred to wait and do a clean sheet aircraft several years later, felt compelled for competitive reasons to do this after Airbus had basically slapped new engines on its A320. So Boeing needed to slap new engines on the 737 as A320s were selling by the thousands after Airbus did that. And Boeing got unlucky, whereas Airbus could just put the engine on the new plane and everything basically worked the same, just became much more efficient. Boeing, the engines didn't fit. They had to move the engines. That kind of threw things out of balance. And that's what MCAS was for, was to make the plane feel to pilots like the old plane. That was important because then pilots could move between the older 737s and this one without having to transition as they would to an entirely different kind of aircraft. And so Boeing could promise these lower training costs. Obviously, we all know how that ended. But that's the big question here. Boeing has remained confident, publicly at least, that there wouldn't be any big new training costs. A lot of simulator time, for example, required. If that changes, if the FAA says this is a different plane and you need simulator time, that's very expensive over the life of an aircraft. And I think one of the biggest long-term worries here, I mean, other than just the existence of the program, but if you accept that this plane is going to be back in the air flying safely at some point here, big long-term question, training costs. Because if it's going to cost millions of dollars more over the life of an aircraft, big if, but if that happens, then that could put downward pressure on the pricing here, because it's just a less competitive aircraft against Airbus.
All right, Seth and Josh, want to thank you both for joining us. And Phil, thank you for bringing us that interview. Also, a programming note, folks, Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg is going to be joining Andrew live tomorrow at the New York Times Dealbook Conference. Make sure to watch CNBC for all the highlights. Big lineup.
Big lineup. Coming up, we're going to go live to a gathering of some of the most high-profile names in finance, taking place just a bit north of here. I think that's that way. Anyway, the biggest financial opportunities and challenges 1 year out from the 2020 election. I think there might be an election today.
There is?
Yep, that's next when Squawk Box returns.
This CNBC program is sponsored by...
I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole-in-one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 74 billion. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £74 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Watford. On chilly days like today, forgetting to turn the heating off is easily done, especially when you're out enjoying some lunch. But it's nice to know with Hive Active Heating, a Which Best Buy, you can turn your heating off from wherever you are. And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill, which sounds like the perfect excuse to order another course. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
The high-profile Greenwich Economic Forum is underway, featuring some of the biggest names in finance and investing. Now, with the presidential election now just 1 year away, it's safe to assume politics will be on the agenda. Dow is up 50% since Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016. It also attracts the high-profile journalists. Our own Leslie Picker joins us now. How was that, Leslie? That was pretty good, wasn't it? With the special guest.
That was pretty good.
Pretty good. I think so
Special
too.
Guest, yes.
You owe me. All right. Good morning.
You, Joe.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. No, I am actually here with David Rubenstein, who is the co-founder and co-executive chairman of Carlyle, our special guest this morning. And speaking of politics, one of the biggest political pieces of news that has moved the markets in, the last year and a half or so is that of the trade war. And this morning there was news out that said that the U.S. and China are considering rolling back some of the tariffs that were put in place in September. You were actually on Squawk Box over the summer where you said that you think there would be a resolution to the trade war by the end of the year. It is November. Is this it?
I do think that they're close to an agreement. I believe had they had the APEC summit in Chile, they probably would have signed something. That might be postponed a little bit now, but I do think they've reached conceptual agreement on the key things on phase one. Phase one is not everything, but it's enough to get people feeling that this is not a big issue for the economy in the next year or so.
And in terms of concessions for the U.S., there's been talks of China buying more agricultural products, for example, but what about some of the hard stuff? That's another thing that you've been focused on, IP, market access to China. Does that get accomplished?
Phase one will have some market access and we'll have some protection for copyrights and patents and so forth, but I don't think all the issues are resolved. The key thing not resolved is China 2025. Those are the issues related to China trying to develop its technology in, let's say, artificial intelligence or semiconductor design, things that we are really competitive with them on, and they are trying to do much more than we would like them to do using government resources to make themselves a bigger player in that area, and that's what they have not resolved yet. They're not going to resolve that before the end of the year.
But you think the market, all they really need to see, in essence, is just a phase one deal. They don't need to see the nitty-gritty.
The market would love a comprehensive deal, but you don't get everything you want in life, right? So a phase one deal, I think expectations have been lowered. I think will be enough to make the markets think that we don't have to worry about a China trade war over the next year or so.
So it'll calm the markets maybe up until the 2020 election then.
It should do enough for about a year or so, I think.
Okay. Well, speaking of the stock markets, again, hit a record high yesterday. Looks like it's appearing to open in the green again today. When you see this tape, does it make you nervous that the markets are overbought relative to fundamentals, or do you think that it is potentially gearing up for some sort of a breakout even higher from here, especially given what you're looking at with?
Well, I don't get nervous when my own stock is going up. I think that's a good thing. But generally, I always think my own stock, Carlyle, is undervalued. But generally, I would say we've been at a peak for a while, and I just don't know how much longer this can continue. But we've been saying it's at a peak for a couple of years now, and we've been wrong because it keeps going higher. So right now, the economy is in reasonable shape. It's not going to be heroic growth of 3 or 4%, but 2% is really likely next year.
Do you still think that we're due for a recession?
There will be a recession at some point, but I don't know when. We always have them. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't think today there looks like there's going to be a recession in 2020. I think there's enough strength in the economy to go past 2020. I can't predict further than that. But right now, I don't think there's a recession likely in 2020 unless some exogenous event we can't predict all of a sudden happens in a geopolitical world.
Now, Joe mentioned politics 2020, obviously 1 year out from now. One of the big topics on the campaign trail has been this idea of wealth redistribution. And yesterday on CNBC, Leon Cooperman told Scott Wapner he called you a philanthropist with a capital P as an example of a billionaire, a wealthy individual who should not have to pay more in taxes because of all the money that you give back to society. Do you agree with his dog in the fight?
Well, he's a very smart man, but I would say generally I am giving away all of my money. I signed the giving pledge. I was one of the first 40 to do so, and I'm going to give away more than half, basically all my money. And I think that taxes are a different issue than philanthropy. I think the taxes now in the United States are not completely fair for everybody. I think there could be improvements. I'm not sure everything done in the last tax act was perfect, but no tax act is ever perfect. And I think tax inequality is a big issue, but I don't know that there's going to be one solution that's going to solve everything. I don't think all of a sudden a wealth tax, for example, would solve all our society's problems if one could ever actually be implemented.
Do you think there are improvements that need to be made in terms of how the taxation of the super wealthy in our country are?
You can always make improvements in taxes, but I'm not sure that there's any one thing that's going to solve our problems. If you tax the upper income people, there aren't enough of those people to really make a wealth distribution effect that's going to be significant. There just aren't enough highly wealthy people. So you have to do something at the middle class. The problem is that the middle class is roughly $65,000 for a family of 4, and people don't like to get taxed at that level. So there just aren't enough people at $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 and above to really make a gigantic wealth redistribution. I think taxes will be a big issue in the general election campaign, but I don't expect to see any major tax bill anytime soon because we haven't had one for many years. We had one in 2017. It takes about 4, 5, 6 years before you get another tax bill because there has to be a lot of some political support for it. There's not one right now for a major overhaul of the tax code again, I think.
Even if there's a change in party and...
Well, you'd have to change both houses as well because taxes presidents talk about taxes, but when they get in office, they realize that the House Ways and Means Committee really writes the tax laws, and then the Senate Finance Committee adjusts it a bit, and there's a conference committee. Presidents have some impact on taxes, but not as much as they might think when they're campaigning.
Well, speaking of, changes under a potential new leadership, Senator Elizabeth Warren has proposed a set of sweeping changes for your industry, the private equity industry, looking at, among other things, making GPs responsible for the debt and pension obligations. People I've spoken with in the industry have said this would be, a nail in the coffin for private equity. Is that something that you think is realistic?
I don't think it won't likely happen. I don't think there's any political support for her proposal in Congress that I've seen from members on either side. I think when you run for president, you say many things you think are going to get you votes, and you realize when you become president, some of those things aren't going to happen. So I think it would be a disaster for the industry, but I think it would be a disaster for the economy. Private equity creates a lot of jobs and preserves a lot of jobs and pays a lot of taxes. And we are the center of the world in private equity in the United States. And if we're going to hurt this industry, I think it's going to hurt the U.S. economy.
And unfortunately, I have to wrap here, but I do want to know you had a new book that came out just last week.
Well, thank you for
interviewing historians.
It's about my effort to educate members of Congress a little bit about American history. I interview great historians in front of members of Congress once a month, and this is a summary of it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the next chapter of this book, the next edition of this book, looks upon this time in history.
Thank you very much for the time, and congratulations on your baby to come.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it. I'll send it back over to you guys.
Leslie, thank you, and our thanks to David as well. Also, a programming note for you. Don't miss an exclusive interview later this morning on Squawk on the Street with hedge fund legend Ray Dalio. That will also be coming from the Greenwich Economic Forum. That's coming at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
Hey, coming up next, top stocks making moves ahead of the opening bell. We will be right back.
Coming up, more reaction to our exclusive interview with Boeing Chairman David Calhoun. Are investors satisfied the company's on the right track? Fresh insight and analysis is straight ahead when Squawk Box returns.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Pulled into the end zone, and he's yanked in by a lineman for the touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Oh, it's gone into the end zone. Seahawks win. Touchdown.
This Thursday, hear the home and away call as the 4-5 Los Angeles Chargers visit the 4-4 Oakland Raiders at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
15-10, 5, touchdown, Denver.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Welcome back to Squawk Box, everyone. We've been watching the futures this morning, and even after setting records yesterday for the S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, all three of those major indexes are indicated higher once again this morning. Dow looks like it would open up by about 62 points right now, in part because of Boeing shares a little higher. That stock's up by about $4 after the chairman, Dave Calhoun, spoke with us exclusively in the last hour. S&P right now indicated up by another 5.5 points, and the NASDAQ indicated up by 20.
It's just a little more than an hour till the actual opening bell on Wall Street, and Dom Chu joins us now with a look at some of the morning's biggest stock movers. Hi, Dom.
All right, so Joe, we're going to start our kind of look with some earnings reports and analyst calls. We'll start with shares of Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, which are higher by around 3.5% so far, roughly 15,000 shares of pre-market volume. This is the maker of treatments for things like eye diseases, high cholesterol, and other serious medical conditions. It posted better than expected profits and sales, thanks in part to better sales of its eczema drug. Those shares have lost around 17% of their value year to date through yesterday's close. Next up, we've got shares of Peloton, which are up by north of 6%, now about 5% on 300,000 shares of pre-market volume. The recently IPO'd maker of internet-connected exercise equipment and video content posted a quarterly loss in its first report as a public company. Revenues, though, better than expected thanks to a doubling of subscribers for its connected fitness product, and those shares showing some gains. And then we're going to end on shares of Beyond Meat, which are higher by around 3% on roughly 175,000 shares of pre-market volume. The maker of plant-based meat alternative foods gets an upgrade by analysts at Bernstein to outperform. It was a market perform. They keep the price target at 106. They like, among other things, better risk reward at current price levels, given the losses we've seen. Also, some of the better results from its Canadian tests at McDonald's locations, guys. I'll send things back over to you.
Hey, Dom, thank you. Great to see you. Folks, coming up, we've got some breaking economic news in just a couple of minutes. The latest trade deficit data just minutes away. We'll have that for you when we come right back.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Stuck in traffic during the big game? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to your favorite NFL team on the go. No TV required. Even during rush hour, you won't miss a single touchdown. Listen to the NFL on TuneIn Premium today.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, whose star seems to be rising in the state of Iowa.
I've advanced past roughly 20 of my competitors, which is not bad for somebody nobody had heard of in January. There are admittedly a few more big hills to climb.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Rick Santelli here, live on the CME floor with breaking news. Our September read on the trade balance, which I'm sure will be a trade deficit, expected $52 billion plus. That's what we received. $52.5 billion does have a minus sign. It is red. It is a deficit, but it is the smallest deficit going back to April when we were a whisker under $52 billion. Of course, trade deficits have taken on outsized meaning during all the trade negotiations. The Chinese currency has been doing better of late. That seems to be a sign that things may be progressing. Interest rates are back above 180 in 10s. 184 close has been the cycle high. We will continue to monitor if interest rates and stocks will continue to go up hand in hand. Becky, back to you.
All right, Rick, thank you. Stick around for a minute. Steve Leisman's here, and he's got more reaction on these numbers, too. What do you think, Steve?
Reading trade data on the fly is the hardest thing I do if you really want to know.
So do it faster.
It's totally insane. Do it faster. Look, it's in line. In general, we look for this thing to reflect what's been going on with the trade war. What's interesting is you have the trade balance getting worse, which I can't tell on the fly here, but one of the things we've talked about is that stuff that may not be coming from China could be coming from elsewhere, and it hasn't improved the trade balance. That said, I don't think improving the trade balance is something that matters. I think it's what you call a red herring, a white elephant. What's the right word for that? The right phrase for that? That doesn't matter. It sounds like the president has described this.
Almost be a misleading thing, so it's probably more of a red herring.
Right. So the president has described this as stealing. It's not stealing. They may be stealing our intellectual property.
Yeah.
But the balance of trade is not necessarily a sign of that. Let me just take a look here. Exports are down, and that's a big issue. Services are about the same, and that's another thing that the president doesn't really talk about, which is the services thing has kept up. It's the goods one that's been down.
What about Boeing?
Imports that's also going to be a factor in there. Let's see if I can get to the transportation thing. I really hate.
Let me just ask Rick a question while you're digging.
Yeah,
through
go
that
ahead.
Number. Hey, Rick, again, this is a number that's so hard to read anything into, not only because of the trade war, but because of Boeing and what's been happening with that along the way too. What sort of, it's heightened interest on this number, but what faith does the trading community put in it at this point?
They still go it pretty simple and straight. It's smaller, it's better. If it's bigger, it's not. All the rest of it really has too many political sidebars for traders. The closer it gets to minus 50, the happier they are. We haven't had a 40 handle in front of that since when? I have to go back all the way to last summer, June of 18, when it was minus 47. Yeah, traders like to keep it simple. Listen, it could be a red herring, it could be a political red herring, but at the end of the day, we're coming towards the final chapters of trade. So let's move on and see what phase one brings, because one thing I can tell you traders are paying close attention to: rising rates and record equity prices.
Having said all that, Steve, what is the Boeing input on this?
It's interesting. Boeing is up month to month, but it's substantially down year to date compared to last year's 41 billion versus 33 billion. That's down a lot. Other things that are down year to date comparatively: agriculture's down, manufacturing exports are down, advanced, every aspect is down. Rick is right, and hopefully we're over the hill on that, but there may be some residual to pay on this. One of the things that I looked at was the year-over-year change in exports and their contribution to GDP. Exports have continuously added to GDP. Over the past year or so, they have had this steady decline, which means, as Rick suggests, there is upside if we can solve this trade issue and get back to where we were.
Hey, Rick, you alluded to this, but what traders want to see is getting some sort of phase one agreement that's put in place. That's why yesterday you saw the futures picking up, or you saw futures picking up as it looked like, okay, even if we undo some of those tariffs that had been put on in September, the good news is that means we're more likely to get some sort of at least détente.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we all have our opinions of this administration, but one thing that I think is hard to dispute, they understand the word compromise. This president and his men out in the field and women out in the field that are trying to put this whole deal together do understand compromise may be coming, and I do think that some of these little parachuted kind of floating ideas that we're going to ultimately see that will chew back some of the tariffs in lieu of maybe a bigger set of phase one issues seems to be what everybody is focused on. And I would also point out that globally interest rates have started to move up. Once again, negative securities with regard to what proportion they play in the global scheme of things continues to move down a bit. And I want listeners and viewers to look at it from this perspective. When that exodus of what was deemed the biggest bubble ever, every institution and every bank and every investor of large size seems to be holding, for example, sovereign debt, is that reverses, where's all that money going to go? I personally think it's going to go into what in many parts of the globe is underweight in global stock, not necessarily the U.S., but all boats will float on that global inflow that could be at the other end of this interest rate trade.
Maybe it goes to money heaven when they sell for less than they paid. No?
Well, I'll tell you what, those negative rates never have made sense, but what will make sense is the exodus out of them.
All right.
Guys, I'm going to come back.
Where?
And we're going to take a look at it just at the top of this. Today, about 20 minutes or so, we're going to do some calculations.
On this show?
On this trade data.
Okay.
Who's winning and who's losing the U.S.-China trade war, more or less. I think a lot of economists say everybody's losing, but let's see who's losing more or less, exports versus imports. It's something we did a couple months ago, and we're going to update the trade scorecard.
Isn't that the one that President Trump retweeted?
President Trump retweeted half of what we did, the part that was better for him.
We need to look back and see who wins eventually, though, because it could be a long-term win.
We'll have a beer.
Could be.
I'll buy you a burger.
Because it has to be resolved, and then we'll see.
How long from now? It's like the Fed thing, like 10 years later.
Hope springs eternal. No more IP theft. No more state-owned enterprise. No more.
There's an amazing story in the New York Times yesterday. Did you see that one about IP theft at academic?
What day is it? Monday? Is it Tuesday?
At universities. It's really quite widespread.
It is? Is that tie green or blue?
I think it's blue.
Okay. You are colorblind. That is obviously blue.
Because he told me to stop wearing green, and then he started wearing green every day.
I did that.
It's the only reason.
It was a head fake.
Jedi mind trick.
Exactly. All right.
Thanks,
what am I thinking now?
Rick.
That we're calling this a panel. I think it's one guy. Can you hang out and be part of this panel for Boeing?
I don't think you need. I got to do my calculations, Joe. But thank you for.
Thanks, but no thanks. Keep your dumb air time.
Yeah. Boeing Chairman Dave Calhoun joined us a short time ago here on Squawk Box, speaking about the still grounded 737 MAX. Talked about Dennis Muhlenberg as well. Here's what Calhoun had to say on the MAX specifically.
Return to service starts the day it's certified. It's not over when it's certified. There's no victory in that, right? We have to get the airplanes that our customers have put on the ground. We have to get them back in the air. We have to assist them every step of the way. And we have to get the airplanes that we've built and are ready for delivery to customers back in the air as well. That's a long program. It's at least a year, and it's a tough, important task, and we believe he's up to it.
For some reaction, let's bring in our guest. Dennis Tager is Allied Pilots Association spokesman and an American Airlines pilot for more than 10 years. Dennis, how much of the interview did you see? Did you see the complete interview?
I absolutely did, and compliments to your team for getting that guest on.
Okay. There are a lot of things that you wanted to hear and that you wanted to see some clarity on. I think the key question is whether Boeing and other manufacturers, for competitive reasons and for lack of a better word, don't rush things out without the pilots or engineers or FAA. Just don't try to cut any corners whatsoever in the interest of safety. Do you think that happened this last time, and do you think it will not happen again based on what the chairman said, Dave Calhoun?
Well, clearly, using the chairman's words, reform must happen. The system failed everyone, and he's relationship to the certification process. So it's good to hear him come on record and not conditionalize that. We're with him on that, and we need to see that changed. It did fail. Everyone's acting on their best behavior now. We like what we're seeing, but we're also very aware, particularly after the hearings, that there was even more information that was new to us last week. So we're going to keep focused on this, but last week didn't help.
So simulator training, pilot training, it's all expensive. If it had been done even with faulty single sensors, could these have been, these tragic incidents, could that have been averted?
Well, we'll never know. I mean, Boeing, in clear evidence in the emails, they requested the FAA take all the information out of pilot manuals and pilot training. Even an MCAS light that was disclosed last week, which was new to us, was removed from the aircraft. So we have a lot of questions as to why it was removed and what the intent was. And the chairman mentioned that there isn't a culture problem. Well, there certainly was the results of a culture problem with this decision on this. As you had even asked, what does the MCAS do? We have questions like, why is the MCAS on the aircraft? Is it for pilot preferences, or is it for a safety issue that they found? So those questions are being answered, but they're a little bit slow in the stream.
Okay, so new software, 2 sensors, additional pilot training. You put all that together, and should every flyer that walks on a 730, when it's finally in the air again, every flyer that walks on should have no recriminations whatsoever about getting on that plane at this point?
Well, that's all going to happen at the cockpit door. It's going to be an eye-to-eye, soul-to-soul contact with our passengers, and they're going to look to me and say, Captain, are we good to go? And my crew, we will not say that unless we are convinced and we are appropriately trained for this MCAS fix, as it would be.
What's your timeline on this? I mean, unfortunately, there is a bit of an urgency among carriers, Boeing, and everyone involved to get this happening as quickly as possible. Should we hope it takes longer, just to make sure? Should we hope that that we can face this even sooner rather than later?
Well, that's a toxic thing in the cockpit. Rush to comply is something that usually leads to some very dark results. So pilots are trained in that, and we encourage everyone to rush to comply. That doesn't mean that you take a vacation, but it means that you are diligent and focused at the task at hand. That's what our passengers deserve, and that's what the new administrator at the FAA seems to be telegraphing very strongly, and we stand with him on that.
I mean, are there scheduled pilot training that you're aware of right now to get more familiar with the 737 MAX, or any of the Allied Pilots Association, any members going to these type of training sessions as we speak?
That's a great point. Yes, our safety experts have already been in the simulator down in Miami to experience some of Boeing's modules. And they go beyond just the MCAS. They go into the flight control computer and what they want to demonstrate there. And some manual trimming challenges that we brought up long ago that challenged the Ethiopian crew so that our pilots are aware of the challenges that Boeing says one way in one manual and another way in a different manual. So all these loose ends need to be brought together, and those pilots, as the chairman mentioned, that our job is to fix the MCAS. Well, I've got news for you. Our job is to see that MCAS fixed, and you need to help ensure that the pilots are trained across the globe. It's not just up to your customers, the airlines. It's de-risking of your enterprise to ensure that the operators protect that asset and the passengers that are on board.
All right, Captain, thank you. Captain Dennis Taser, Allied Pilots Associated, American Airlines. Captain, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come, how did stocks find themselves at record levels once again, and what could power them even higher from here? Hedge fund titan Keith Meister is going to be joining us on set with some of his theories about what's happening right now. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You'll get interviews, original content, and behind-the-scenes access. Look for us on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. And subscribe to Squawk Pod today.
Orlando isn't just the theme park capital of the world.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
On a day such as this, we pray the car won't let us down. But winter sneers, and the battery bails, the bulbs blow, the wipers wipe out. Can anyone save you? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We'll check your wiper blades, batteries, bulbs, and windscreen. We'll even send you an MOT reminder, all completely free. And we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords. For life's journeys.
Subject to availability, exclusions apply.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Whether you're waiting for a train or a takeaway, with Tesco Mobile, you don't have to wait for a brilliant deal. Our best ever Black Friday event is on. This week, you can get a Samsung Galaxy A50 for just $17.49 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Get yours by the 10th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £18.99, now £17.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
We buy the pasta by the pound. We pay about $3.50 per.
About or exactly? That is a simple thing.
No, exactly $3.50 per pound.
So how much is that?
$1.16.
So that's $1.16. What's the next ingredient?
6 ounces of steak.
Or no, that was half a pound. Pre-made frozen steak.
Yes. I think that steak cost us $2.75.
You confirm the steak price?
That's definitely wrong.
So can you get the bill out?
It's $4.20.
Oh, okay. Let's put that in.
And that's a sneak preview of tonight's all-new season of The Profit. It premieres tonight at 10 Eastern right here on CNBC.
The Dow right now joining the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ in record territory. By the way, check out these 2019 returns. With less than 2 months to go in the year, you now have the Dow up by 18%. The S&P is up by about 23%. And then the NASDAQ's up by 27%. Joining us right now for a look at the markets, the Fed, what's working, and where he expects to see the rest of the year headed is hedge fund manager Keith Meister. He is founding and managing partner at FOREX Management. And Keith, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Becky. Great to be here.
A little bit of a surprise market. We're not seeing a replay, at least to this point, of what we saw last year at this point. People are kind of shaking off those recession fears, and the momentum certainly seems to be to the upside at this moment. What do you think's happening?
I think that's right, and you began by defining the market as being up 22, 23% year to date. But if we look at it over the last 12 months, it's probably up more like 6 or 8%.
Right, if you look at the December 24th lows that we saw that were put in last year.
Correct. So I think the market narrative for this year has been defined by two trends that you talk about every single day on your show, the Fed and China trade. And right now, on both issues, I think we're in a happy lull for the markets. We began the year with a concern that the Fed was going to, in Joe's words, I remember, end our economic expansion. And why was that part of their mandate? Investors thought the Fed had lost touch with reality and had raised rates when they should not have. Subsequently, we've had 3 rate cuts. The Fed has overcome some training wheels associated with communication, and they've given the market today the message the market wants to hear, which is we're in the right place for now. So good news can be good news. And I thought Friday's jobs report was really important. We had a good jobs report, and the market went up. So the Fed said, we're going to be patient. So as a fundamental investor, I like hearing that because the narrative can now switch to which of my companies are doing the right things and not with regard to the Fed.
So we're not necessarily looking for the Fed's next move. We don't expect them to do anything. They are telling us they are on pause for a long time to come unless the situation changes drastically. And that's good news from fundamentals, right?
Yeah, so now the narrative can change. I think there's a similar backdrop vis-a-vis China. So we've all been conditioned for this trade war now. I don't think any of us think it's going away anytime soon. There's not going to be a magic bullet. But I think guardrails have been established. Neither the Trump administration or the Chinese established administration, I think, want to see this cause their plans to be interfered with. They want to fight their positions, but we've seen they're going to do it in a way where they're going to find it's going to escalate and it's going to de-escalate. And I think investors now see guardrails, and this two-phase solution is a great example. It gives everyone a win but doesn't solve the problem and punts and defers the issue. So as a market participant, as you head into the end of the year, you don't need to worry in the short term about China, and you don't need to worry in the short term about the Fed. So relative to a 10-year below 2% or a Fed funds rate of 1.5 to 1 3/4, equities today can look reasonably valued and hospitable for investment.
We had a conversation earlier this morning about how a lot of the hedge funds were running behind the market because we've seen this big pickup towards the end of the year if you're comparing up against the S&P 500. Now, I'm told that your long-only fund is outperforming the market, 30% plus up, but that your hedged fund may be running a little bit below that. How difficult is it to try and look at a hedge fund in particular in markets like these?
Investors don't expect a hedged equity product to outperform a market.
On a good year?
On a good year. What an investor, I think, would look at if you're running a hedge product is understand what your beta is and how your performance has been to that beta. And that outperformance, which is referred to as alpha, is what investors want to pay for. So hopefully we can get a lot of the market performance in up years and a lot less of the downside in bad years.
The downside. And I guess that leads to my next question, which is we've had a lot of people think that, momentum is going to continue through the end of the year, at least if nothing really changes in the trade talks, and it proceeds at this pace, especially because you have a lot of shorts that are trying to cover at this point. What happens when the calendar resets January 1?
So there's been 2 pain trades for hedge funds. One has been markets just going up, and the other recently over the last 3 months has been the unwind of the momentum versus value trade. So the real question that we're wrestling with, and I think most or many market investors, is can we continue to be carried up without the growth and momentum stocks working? I'm of the view that we're not going to be continue to We're not going to continue to go up led by cyclicals and financials and traditional value stocks. There's a reason why investors were crowded into growth stocks. The economic environment for the world hasn't changed. There's still lots of negative yielding debt and a view that global growth will be lower than average for a longer period of time. In that world, I think investors want to own companies that have real growth, and they're going to want to come back to businesses that are going to grow at 20+% regardless of whether GDP is 0 or 3. That's where everyone crowded because the stories were easy. So valuation may have gotten ahead of itself with regard to those names. The great news is they grow into their value, and on pullbacks, you can buy these really high-quality franchises because you know they're going to grow, and relative to other assets, they trade at a reasonable rate. So one example quickly, Adobe last night, a phenomenal business, updated investors on its outlook at an analyst day. This is a $130-odd billion company, and it told the world because every business is investing in digitizing their enterprise, it's going to grow at 20+% for the next handful of years, revenue, have positive operating leverage, and have essentially no debt, and generate a 4 or 5% free cash flow yield on the current valuation. That, to me, over the long term, is a much more attractive asset to own than a fixed income security that guarantees you a 2% return.
Keith, I wish we had more time, but I want to thank you for being here today. It's great to see you.
Thanks.
Keith Meister.
Well, let's get down to the New York Stock Exchange. Jim Cramer joins us now. Jim, I know that you were watching it as a discriminating, and I'm sure you were listening to every word as someone that not just, looks at the stock of Boeing, but someone who cares about the flying public and someone who cares about what is one of the great American companies. I know, like me, you're probably pulling for them to get this right in the future. Did what you hear make you feel better that they're on the right track with Calhoun and Muhlenberg?
First, it was a great interview with the guy that you really need to talk about because he is the ultimate boss these days, and I did feel better. But as you mentioned, I am completely rooting for them, and I just believe that they are going to get past this. When I heard about Calhoun really talking about the big issues, like when he has to be Southwest, yeah, okay, they're angry and they're right to be angry. American, yeah, we're going to give them some money. The pilots, yeah, we're going to do what's right for them. Every box was checked, and it was not by rote. It was we got to hear that Dennis is going to give up his salary. That's what we wanted to hear when he was in Capitol Hill. What a great interview. I mean, if you don't feel better about Boeing after that interview, I guess you just have it in for Boeing. Because this was really, he's an exceptional man. You know that. Phil LeBeau did a great job, too. I just felt like, you know what, a lot of my worries were put to rest.
Well, I would because Muhlenberg's an aerospace engineer and because there'd be a long learning curve for a replacement, and I know there's some overhang from what happened, and there's some people looking for him, they're not going to be satisfied till he's gone. If I knew you had someone like Calhoun and the combination of those two, you got Calhoun with all that experience at GE and just a solid guy in general. And then Muhlenberg's an aerospace engineer that knows everything that's been going on. So maybe the combination of those two should assuage some of the concerns about getting this plane back up in the air.
Yeah, you can't change horses midstream. That would be a mistake. And the CFO, Greg Smith, he's fabulous. Look, they have a big bench, too.
Yeah.
You and I both know this is a tragic thing. How about the fact that Calhoun said, we made mistakes? He didn't say there were mistakes made. Right. We made mistakes. And that's the kind of thing that you and I want to hear from CEOs and from chairmen. It is something we did wrong. And I welcome that. And I think that Calhoun as we both know, is a very tough guy. If he felt that Muhlenberg had to be out, he would have said, you know what, we're going to get this problem fixed, and then we'll see. And he did not say that.
All right. Thanks, Jim. And thanks for the kind words, and thanks for watching. And, I tried to, watching what you were saying, trying to ask your questions as well. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
We'll see you in a couple minutes. And Squawk Box will be right back.
Whether you're waiting for a train or a takeaway, with Tesco Mobile, you don't have to wait for a brilliant deal. Our best ever Black Friday event is on. This week, you can get a Samsung Galaxy A50 for just $17.49 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Get yours by the 10th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £18.99, now £17.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Hey NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you have unlimited access to every team and every game in the league. Listen live as it happens or on demand. Anytime, anywhere. All season long. Search NFL today.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raz, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
MSNBC is on TuneIn. Get up-to-the-minute coverage on news and events from around the world with MSNBC's live 24/7 station on TuneIn. At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with MSNBC's full lineup of shows, including Hardball with Chris Matthews.
Hi, I'm Chris Matthews. Thanks for listening to MSNBC on TuneIn.
And The Rachel Maddow Show. Plus, when news breaks, MSNBC has you covered with live updates, expert analysis, and more. Search MSNBC on TuneIn today.
All right, we got the latest trade data deficit from just a short time ago. Steve Leisman's been doing some calculations. He's ready to tell us what it all means for the U.S.-China trade wars.
Yeah, some quick calculations with the help of my expert producer, Haley Lee. And we have charts for you, too, Becky. And this is the chart that President Trump did not tweet out, the one that shows the U.S. hurting more in the trade battle in percentage terms. U.S. exports are down 15.5% year-to-date through September. From China, they're down 13.5%. But China hurting a lot more when you look at in dollar terms. This is the chart that President did tweet out. You can see we're down $14.5 billion. The Chinese down $53 billion. So in percentage terms, it's a lot more painful. On the U.S. terms. In dollar terms, a lot more painful on China. So go ahead, Mr. President. Do all the tweeting you want.
All right, folks, that does it for us today. Make sure you join us tomorrow. Right now, it's time for Squawk on the Street.
I'm Carl Quintanilla with Jim Cramer, David Faber at the New York Stock Exchange. The tide of record highs and trade optimism rolls on today. Dow futures up almost 80 points amid reports the White House is debating whether to cut some tariffs on Chinese goods in order to solidify phase one. Europe is mixed in the 10-year, approaching 184. We got ISM services and jolts in an hour. Our roadmap begins with Wall Street's record rally. Stocks point to a third straight day of gains, fueled by increasing China trade optimism. Coming up, we'll get exclusive insight from two investment titans, JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon and Bridgewater's Ray Dalio.
Plus, shares of Uber, they are sinking on continuing losses, more than $1 billion in the third quarter. But CEO Dara Khosrowshahi predicts profitability within 2 years.
And done everything right. Boeing's new chairman backing embattled CEO Dennis Muhlenberg in his handling of the 737 MAX crisis. Let's start with Uber. Shares falling in pre-market despite a revenue beat. Gross bookings and trip totals did come in below consensus. Stocks now 35% below the IPO price back in May. Yesterday on Closing Bell, CEO Dara Khosrowshahi said he sees profitability, as David said, for the company in 2021.
It was a very significant beat on the top line in terms of revenue growth accelerating and the bottom line. We increased our 2019, the midpoint of our guidance in as far as EBITDA goes by $250 million. And I'll tell you, Deirdre, while we haven't finalized our planning, and it's going to take a lot of hard work from a lot of folks, we are actually targeting 2021 for adjusted EBITDA profitability full year.
Sort of echoes of what Lyft said last week. Jim, Street's kind of mixed on this. I've seen some price target cuts and raises today.
Well, I mean, you've got RBC saying that there's 1.7 billion shares about to be unlocked. Wedbush says only 763 million. It's really interesting that there's a dispute on that. You know, this was one of those calls where you're listening. You're saying, wow, good. And then you get to Uber Eats. And you say, what? Why are they in that business? Why don't they seed that business? That would make it so that 2021 is, even maybe the fourth quarter of 2020, I want to put words in Dara's mouth, but that was the big issue. And you got Grubhub last night. We've got Shake Shack talking about it last night. This is a bad business.
Yeah.
And it's bad for them, maybe worse than others.
Gross bookings also missed estimates, but
Right.
Uber Eats missed. And Nelson tried the CFO on the call talked about nearly 100 cities that are adjusted EBITDA margin positive for Uber Eats. But the large private capital inflows into the online food delivery category, competition has been fierce in some markets. He went on to say, in fact, it's only about 15% of Eats gross bookings that make over half of their adjusted EBITDA margin loss. And by the way, we said this. What's so interesting about this is their largest single investor, SoftBank, is in part some of the capital behind those very competitors that are causing these margin losses.
It is amazing to me because if someone were to blink, no one blinks. I mean, Square was smart to sell caviar to DoorDash, but that's a $400 million deal. David, that's intriguing because how much of that is making it so they can't blink? I mean, if you offload this thing, we're going to think more of this company, not less if they did.
No, but they did. He said they did get out of South Korea.
Right, he did.
Because it shows a willingness
right.
on their part to exit markets where there is a low return on investment.
But this food business, can we just accept the fact that when you have behind the scenes that, look, I own a restaurant, I own 2 restaurants. This is what we talk about when I'm with these CEOs of restaurants. They just say, look, this is just a fiasco. I mean, the money that is in a business that frankly is not a good business. I had a guy on last night, Max Smith, who had the Ojo scooter. 30% more delivery per Ojo scooter. And I'm listening, I'm saying, you know what, get me some Ojos and let me beat Uber. I mean, I don't want to be in the business.
At some point, that business will rationalize. Yes. The delivery of food business will rationalize.
It's a crummy business.
Right now, you got a lot of money still moving into it, as we've said, from large investors. I don't know. Funding business models, one of which, or two, some of them will succeed.
Yeah,
maybe it'll be Uber Eats. You can't. You're going to get out of it only to watch somebody else.
I don't like to spend $10 to get $8. I've never seen that business model work.
Well, this goes back to, the discussions we had pre-IPO. I mean, relative to the few analogs there are, it's a complex model. And you don't like complexity in this case.
Look, I mean, here's what happens. You go to Uber Eats, you say, listen, Grubhub is saying I'm going to pay X. You got to come underneath Grubhub. And then you go after that, you go to DoorDash, you say, look, Uber's coming in here. I went underneath that. It's what we call football. You can pit these guys against each other because there's no edge. It's a total commodity. It's what I used to call uncoated free sheet paper. There is no model that can make sense, and there's no margin that can make sense. And when you're in the restaurant, I mean, even my little restaurants, I can argue with these guys.
But my point is about Uber. I mean, there's ride sharing, there's logistics, there's delivery. Do you want them to be in all these silos?
I want them to be in freight. Freight's not that good right now because of the economy, but they're doing fabulously in freight. That's a great business. They have that technology business that was hard for me to read. That sounded like an Other Bets business.
Yeah, the Other Bets. Yeah.
But I think
a lot of other things.
Freight is really great. I think that if there are remember they do say that they're number one, but there's two. Some of these markets have 2, 3, 4, 5 competitors.
Well, some of the foreign markets. Again, Didi.
Yeah,
they're competing.
By the way,
a huge investor.
You get into a Didi, and the guy's got a tie, and he's got the mints and this water back there, and you feel like a king.
Really?
Didi. Yeah.
Where have you taken it? Where have you done a Didi?
Oh, my son did it.
Yeah?
Yeah, Beijing.
Nice.
Shanghai. Oh, nice. My God, he feels like a king back there.
Got it.
I mean, Didi's got some differentiation. It's like those British cabs. TD's got game, David.
Okay, if you say so. I have not ridden.
Did you guys get the 50% off Uber yesterday? Did anyone else get that?
I only got the 30.
I got 50. I guess it's some sort of experiment.
Meanwhile, on the lockup, which we mentioned, they were asked about it, of course, and said they don't know what each individual shareholder will do. They've had constructive dialogue with their long-term holders. And they do go on to say, though, there's a lot of supply that's going to hit the marketplace, and we don't know what's going to really happen.
Bad answer.
Again.
Bad
but
set
we can
of facts.
Rest assure you, we've taken whatever steps we can to have the dialogue we need to with most of the parties, whatever that means. And guys, finally from me, I thought the most interesting part was the very beginning of the call where Dara said the world's magical companies are the ones that can compound top-line growth at massive scale, improve margins, allocate capital, and do the right thing for all their constituencies. We're working hard to be one of those magical companies.
Yeah, the year of magical thinking. I mean,
Does he have a cape and a
it
wand?
was. I didn't understand that at all. I mean, it was kind of ethereal, a little bit philosophical, and absolutely nothing that I wanted to hear.
We'll watch Uber obviously down in the pre-market. The other big story, of course, is the market at large. Stocks are on track to continue their record run today. Dow's coming off its first record close since July. As you probably know, it was the S&P's 16th record high of the year. NASDAQ outperforming both of those, though, up 27% year to date. Jim, as you have said, we have reverted to FANG. That's doing so much heavy lifting here.
That's great. I mean, look at Apple. I mean, I was at a gathering recently where we talked about who should be the man of the year. I mean, person of the year. I do think that Tim Cook, you really got to think about what he's accomplished.
You think he's CEO of the year?
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll probably be that fabulous activist, the young lady.
Oh, you're just talking generally, man of the year, like...
I'm saying that I'm nominating him right here.
Really?
Person of the year. Yes.
Really?
Particularly at the $2.5 billion...
really?
Home housing.
Nobody else on the entire planet who you think might deserve that?
He was runner-up in 2012. He certainly had a better year this year. It's like Babe Ruth. He had a better year against
Herbert Hoover. Oh, cool.
Hoover.
Right.
Hoover.
Was it Hoover? Cool.
Maybe Hoover. We got to get that down. Look, why is that so off? He created a trillion. He has $1 trillion company. We all walk around with white things. I guess our
question would be though, over Nadella, over some of the other growth
of the business person. I mean, arguably Benioff, because of the business is the greatest force of change. That's another. Intellectual business is booming. The business CEOs are thinking. They're thinking while you read Twitter and not care about what I'm saying. They are thinking. You do?
Yeah, I do.
What'd I just say?
You said they're thinking while you read Twitter and you think.
Who did I say?
People. The people.
Which one?
I don't know. Which one?
Benioff.
Oh, right, Benioff. That's it. Right.
And you'd put him over Cornell, Jensen Huang.
I like Cornell. I love Jensen Huang. He's HBR's #1. He is fantastic and just a gentleman. Everybody. I mean, they got thousands of happy engineers there. That's Jensen Huang, David.
Sometimes to be person of the year, you don't necessarily have to do good things. It can just be that you're in the midst of Mullenberg,
Yeah, Mullenberg is person of the year?
No, I mean, say, a lot of trouble. Interesting.
Yeah.
Dealing with it, trying to. Listening to that interview, of course, with Calhoun was fascinating this morning.
That was a fabulous interview.
He made so much news. That was
unbelievable. I mean, talk about a rectitude guy coming in and say, oh, yeah, we'll pay American. Yeah, we're going to solve this problem. We talk about it every day.
He did not...
no flinching there.
He did not duck.
Phil did try to get him on, for example, carrier compensation. Or the pricing of the MAX
he did indicate that there was conceivably going to be compensation paid.
Yeah, I'm just saying he did say that we let him down. I want Gary Kelly.
Yep, in American, I had Doug Parker on, said he owes him hundreds of millions of dollars, and they said, yeah, well, we're going to do that. What a guy, an honor. Did you ever know him in
Calhoun? No, I didn't. He was a long-time GE executive, but I didn't really know.
A man of tremendous stature. Person of tremendous stature.
He did say
he's well regarded. Yeah.
Said if you missed it this morning on Squawk, said Mullenberg has quote done everything right. They're not looking at clawbacks. This will be called the MAX when it returns to service, which they still believe will be before year end.
But there was one thing that I wish that Mullenberg had done in front of Congress, which is say, listen, I'm not going to take it on and Calhoun said that Muhlenberg said it this weekend. I also thought what he was talking about was Muhlenberg deeply effective in Congress, and that is something that you want to hear. I mean, I didn't think it was for show. There was nothing for show. There was no Potemkin village here with Calhoun. None. It was just for real.
Does that give you more confidence?
I said yes. Yes, I feel more confident. This is a huge part of, look, this was a terrible tragedy. And what I heard today was it's a terrible tragedy. It's not, Boeing's going to do everything they can. It's not the Boeing way. There were a lot of questions about the actual engineering of it and whether it was right, the right redundancies. And he said we made mistakes. He didn't say mistakes were made. He didn't say, well, you know what, we're going to examine that. He said, we made mistakes. I thought that was great, too. This man's a chairperson. This guy, you got the sense that Muhlenberg works for the board. Now, there had been questions when he was in front of Congress where he said, oh, the board do this, the board do that. And we're all so, and Congress is so jaded about the boards being owned by the CEOs. This board is not owned by the CEO. It's just not. This is an independent board. And that's what I thought Calhoun really accomplished.
Take a listen to this.
From the vantage point of our board, Dennis has done everything right from the beginning. From the beginning. Remember, Dennis didn't create this problem. But from the beginning, he knew that MCAS should and could be done better. And he has led a program to rewrite MCAS to alleviate all of those conditions that ultimately beset two unfortunate crews and the families and victims.
He did say Muhlenberg will not get any bonus pay until the MAX flies again. Some argued, is that an economic incentive to rush this plane back?
No, I think that, I think Calhoun, you told him it was not going to be back for a year. Calhoun would say then it shouldn't be back for a year. And one of the things that I thought that was so great about what he said reminds me of Jim McNerney, frankly, which is that, look, we're not even, this is going to fly when it should fly. There are a lot of people who hope it can fly just because it's setting back business. I got the impression from Calhoun that business is irrelevant.
You seemed more interested in whether or not Boeing planes could be part of a China trade deal.
Yeah, I think that Mr. Calhoun got that question wrong. Becky was not trying to conflate the two, which is that if they fix safety, I think that there's a lot of us who are saying, when is China going to show good faith? I know that, say, the Navarro wing would like to see some good faith. And it's not just an ag buy anymore. It would be something like a real commitment to Boeing. President Xi, depending upon what outlet you read, is alternately hoping that the tariffs are cut, is trying to make a deal. Look, President Xi, if you're watching, which he completely isn't, you can get Huawei back in, which I know he is watching. But you gotta give a big order, and it can't just be soy. That day is over. Brazil is now the way you get soy. People think you can switch. I mean, the soy guys I deal with and the chemical guys, you can't just say, okay, that was it with Brazil. Now we're switching to U.S. It doesn't work like that. I also think that they wouldn't be so wrong. I know no one's going to like this other than millennials, but they could use a non-beef product.
The Chinese.
Yes. They love milk that is not milk. You know that? They love white wave. I think it's time that they go to Ethan Brown. They go before McDonald's does. But McDonald's has a test going on in 27 Canadian. Are you kidding me? This is the time for Chris, the new CEO, to step up and say, you know what, we're going to trial it like Burger King did the Impossible Burger. That was talk about some mistake. Yeah. That among others that Easterbrook made. This is a mistake. I don't know about that other stuff. I don't care about that other stuff, right?
We do have news on the outgoing McDonald's chief. Got an upgrade of Beyond Meat today, which we'll talk about.
That was a great upgrade.
Yep. And it's a big morning on tap as well. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon is going to join us, talk about everything from U.S.-China trade to the presidential election. And hedge fund billionaire Ray Dalio on the market's record run and his call to reform capitalism. Cramer's Mad Dash and the opening bell coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This CNBC program is...
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hey, we know that Nature Valley nut butter cups are delicious anywhere. But why just sit in the kitchen eating them? When you could be here, chilling outside in the fresh air with a tasty treat. Oh, good boy!
Whole grain oats with a delicious real nut butter filling. Nature Valley nut butter cups. Get out more.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR Network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
Time for a mad dash. Let's get you ready for the opening bell about 10 minutes from now, right here from the New York Stock Exchange. Peloton.
Wow. Wow. Hey, they delivered. I mean, this was the best of the ones that have come public during this period, this little window. 103% growth, 562,000 to 1.6 million. I mean, holy cow. Now, David, here's what's key. When you look at the the amount of money these guys are making, I mean, they raised it, David. Their fiscal year ends in July. We were looking for 1.35 billion. They're going to do 1.4 to 1.5 billion. I mean, tremendous number of people on it. In honor of this, my wife actually removed her
clothing
laundry, and she used it this weekend. And she was like, what was that?
Gross margins up to 46.1%. That was a 14 basis point improvement.
David,
see that?
These guys are for real? I think so.
Why is the stock down?
Wow. I don't know. I didn't think it was a bad quarter.
I thought it was going to be up.
I guess because they all suck. They're all bad.
We got to find
anything that the underwriters touch, except for the Chinese stocks. Those have been real super.
Total revenue $228 million. That was up 103% year over year.
You can't, David. You can't please people. You can't. This was a good quarter. I made fun of this deal, but this was a good quarter. David, this is the year of magical thinking. Isn't that Joan Didion?
Yes, I think.
Isn't that Joan Didion?
Slouching
toward 52-week low.
It's coming back a little bit. We'll see how the stock opens. By the way,
spill some coffee on that?
Oh, really?
No. Maybe just the shiny nature of that.
No, it could have been a stain from a long time back.
Simonize? You simonize that?
I do. I simonize everything, including my face. Be sure to stay tuned, by the way. We do have an exclusive, as I said, with Jamie Dimon, Ray Dalio, and we'll also be talking to the CEO of Peloton. That's coming up next. But next, we got an opening bell as well.
I am the twisting thundercloud. It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea.
Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 74 billion. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £74 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things, and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
As markets continue to make more history today, stay tuned for our interview with Ray Dalio. He's been outspoken about reforming capitalism over the next few years. Also, J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon talks some trade, the economy, and the 2020 election. The opening bells in 6 minutes.
Do you think your son is a good business person?
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up. Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Hello, Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Far wing. Elevates. Triple bucket.
The war of the crown. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
To
it.
the sideline. The man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
MSNBC is on TuneIn. Get up-to-the-minute coverage on news and events from around the world with MSNBC's live 24/7 station on TuneIn. At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with MSNBC's full lineup of shows, including Hardball with Chris Matthews.
Hi, I'm Chris Matthews. Thanks for listening to MSNBC on TuneIn.
And The Rachel Maddow Show. Plus, when news breaks, MSNBC has you covered with live updates, expert analysis, and more. Search MSNBC on TuneIn today.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in
the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You're watching CNBC Squawk on the Street, live from the financial capital of the world. Opening bell in 3 minutes on this Tuesday. Another busy session full of trade news. Uber, Peloton, we've talked about already. It's Election Day in Kentucky, Mississippi, and Virginia. You mentioned Peloton. Shake Shack was the other big name out last night, Jim.
Yeah,
We're disappointed.
Little light. We're looking for 2.7. They come in at 2. The analysts stick by it. They think that it's still a great growth story. But remember, this is the most challenged, it's not only the challenged industry. Remember, go back to McDonald's. There's burger wars all over the place. Wendy's. Now, Shake Shack is, I think that some people say it's not real good, not real quick serve. It's got more going than that. But in the end, a comp number is a comp number. You got to come back to Chipotle. It turns out that they really did have unbelievable numbers.
I know, but they posted 2. We were looking for 2.5. Is that worth a fifth of their market cap?
I thought the same thing. I said, were people looking for 5? I mean, it acted like, that's not that bad a miss, but this has become an unforgiving market for growth stocks. I mean, Peloton was up 2. Dave and I were just going over. By the time we finished talking about it, it's down. The growth stocks are having a hard time. Keith Meister talking about how good Adobe was last night. Adobe was fantastic. Big analyst meeting. If Adobe doesn't hold, then I think people are going to dislike these stocks again. And I think that the Uber, this Uber's going to flood the market. I mean, I got no comfort about the lockup expiration. None. Did you get comfort?
No, when they just flat out say we don't know, it's hard to get comfort, right? What was the quote? We don't really know what's going to happen.
By the way, as for Adobe, they do guide above for 2020, and we got targets up at Citi, JPM, RBC. You mentioned lockups. Bernstein goes to outperform Beyond Meat, saying we think the lockups are going to be disruptive in the short term, but they keep 106.
Beyond Meat is one of those companies that has, let's say, it has a cult following with money. It's not Tesla that has a cult following, but this got a much better balance sheet. And I think people are starting to wake up to the idea, not that it's an ecosystem, but it can be used in many different ways. And this company is pure. When you speak to them, although they do, the cellulose is a big part made by DuPont, but when you speak to Beyond Meat, they're on a mission. They're mission-driven. Now, I know these are terms that when I say them, David laughs at me because I really am a dollar sign represented by a man. But they have a purpose. They're purpose-driven. And the millennials, David, are actually driven to like good things, and they're not and positives.
Trying to save the planet?
Yeah.
On the day we officially withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, we should add.
Well, we're different. We're pro-coal. Let them eat coal, David.
Yes. And mercury. We're full of mercury.
Let's get the opening bell here. S&P 500 at the CNBC Real-Time Exchange. The big board here is Madison Square Garden Company, celebrating college basketball's Champions Classic. We got the Spartans, the Jayhawks.
Michigan State.
Yes.
And Wildcats.
Wildcats.
Yep. They all look good. You see those and you think, I cannot believe it's basketball season already.
By the way, at the NASDAQ, it's Q&K International Group, an apartment rental platform in China.
Now, I think it's important to point out that the most important thing that happened in the last 24 hours was some crazy bobcat Black Panther that walked on this. It was at the Giant Camp. There it is. There's a metaphor for everything you need to know about what was once a great American football team.
New York sports, actually, I think.
Yeah, that's why I thought of MSG when I thought of them, David.
For everything.
Yeah.
Whether it is basketball or football, we're having a rough go of it here in the great city of New York.
There's only one team I trust, and I think is really good. It's a team with a great kid playing quarterback, young kid. Not Danny Dimes. He's a Faber.
He's not a quarterback. He was a wide receiver.
No, he's a wide receiver. Faber's kid.
That season's over, too, unfortunately.
Faber's kid, though.
It ended heartbreakingly.
Could be recruited.
It's
D4.
We don't need to be D4. Yeah. We're not sure we want him to play. We'll see.
That's the calculus is tough. If your kid's good, the coach is asking you to keep him in, but you've got to start thinking ahead about injuries and all that.
It's a major issue. It really is.
Summit High, we had Money Badger just patented by Badgley. who is the kicker for San Diego, got people 15 points. Not San Diego, the L.A. Chargers. Got 15 points this weekend in fantasy. Bachelor. Look, I live by this. The guy was in my daughter's math class.
Jim, you said you're going to watch to see if Adobe holds, up
Yes,
5% still, but Regeneron up almost 6% today on this
Yeah.
news, and we got an upgrade of Amgen as well.
You know, these companies are valued as if they are steel mills. I mean, I think that Len Schleifer's doing a great job. My Chapel Trust hold on to Amgen. We got a little frustrated. Yeah, made some money, but some of these guys are developing drugs. This Inovio, the 6-month progression. I mean, there's stuff that is going on at Regeneron that's terrific. Amgen, by the way, they won back the leadership in their migraine drug. And they have Otezla, which is what they got from Bristol Myers, but Bristol Myers' balance sheet getting much better because they sold that. It's the halcyon days for pharma because people are starting to think that maybe Biden is back in the lead. This is all Senator Warren, Vice President Biden, Senator Warren. Who's ever in the lead, if Warren's in the lead, these stocks go down. I mean, it really is pretty amazing. It must be an algorithm.
I would imagine.
It is still, early. That is what everybody
You say
will
that every
tell
time.
you. I do because it's true.
That discourages horse race talk.
2003, I think at this point, Howard Dean was far in the lead.
Didn't he become a CNBC contributor?
John Kerry was at 4% in Iowa. He went on to become the Democratic nominee. So,
The Washington Nationals were opened very badly, and they ended up winning the World Series.
They opened very badly. And then they ended up as world champions.
They're below the Mets.
Let them play the game.
Yeah, I think at this point, last cycle, Ben Carson was probably about this time was in the lead.
Well, okay, all right. Let's step back for a second. The idea is that there's Biden, and then there's like a team of like 40 people who would like to make it so that we never have to pay for drugs again. That's a wild exaggeration.
That is a wild exaggeration. There are obviously some moderates, whether it's Amy Klobuchar or even Cory Booker, or people who have no chance. The Bennetts and the guy from Montana.
Hannah Montana?
No, what's his name?
Hannah Montana. She's
Montana.
polling 2%.
I'm so into Hannah Montana's good.
None of those people are in favor of Medicare for all.
I saw Jewel last night. She's
not
running.
Jewel, J-U-U-L.
No, that is
singer.
They call me assassin. You ever read that Jack Tatum book? That's Jewel. They call me assassin. Jack Tatum.
Yes, I remember.
Look at Disney coming down, though. You got to worry about that.
We got 1 week to go before the launch of Disney Plus.
The selling in the growth stocks, PepsiCo. Yesterday, Procter was down gigantically, down 4 points. People are flooding out of those stocks and going to the companies that would do well in a trade agreement. And this is just one of those worthless rotations where people are going to lose a fortune by buying high and selling low. And I wish we could stop them, but they won't let us.
Jim, what? A company we watch closely for a while, Occidental Petroleum, purchaser of Anadarko, not having a good morning either.
That's interesting because yesterday Chevron was up $5.30, even though it reported a really not great quarter with production. And people said, aha, now we know why they needed Anadarko.
Right.
But Occidental, wow, David, you have a line on that? That's suboptimal there.
Deleveraging apparently obviously continues to be the key for this year and beyond, given all the debt. And, you've talked a lot about it.
Yeah,
that paper that they gave to Warren Buffett.
Well, look, I mean,
to help finance the deal, to avoid a shareholder vote.
I just think that you've got to love the Permian to death. The number of pipes that are coming from the Permian, the amount of oil that comes out. You need the Saudis to just shut down. You need to take out 2 million barrels a day because we have got so many barrels that are just waiting for those pipelines. By natural gas, by the way, it's like natural gas is worthless. It's easier to flare than it is to ship. That's something, isn't it? I can't believe Peloton's down $1.25. I can't believe it.
It was up, as you said.
Jeez, what do you have to do? This market is a hard taskmaster.
We're going to talk to John Foley in the next hour from Peloton.
He's a smart
interesting guy.
Man.
Yep. Indeed. You mentioned oil, Jim. Aramco.
Hey, jokers. So you got the Trojan. What is that? The Spartan. Spartan. Hey, Spartan. Hey, Spartan, how you doing there? Look at this. Will you believe this? This is what it comes down to, believe me. How you doing there, partner?
You mentioned oil. Reuters says Aramco is going to announce the price range on the 17th.
Right.
Roadshow begins the 18th, and then list on the 11th of December.
Oh man, when does that lock up? I hope they don't have a lock. That better be a lock and key lockup.
Are you once again worried about air supply with big new issues coming in?
Have to. I mean, look at these. I mean, I just feel like that one's got to be tight. Thank heavens it's worldwide, so it's going to create. It's an ecosystem against the market, certainly, but it won't all be the U.S. Coca-Cola's at 52. Do something. This is crazy. These are good companies.
Yes. Speaking of good companies, Emerson, worth mentioning.
I thought it was a good quarter, but a bad forecast.
Reported earnings, and that's one part of it. And then they did come to a peace with the activist investor D.E. Shaw.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Showed up in their stock. Well, they have an agreed-upon board member who's been added already to the board. Mark Blinn will be added to the board.
Tell us about him.
Being added to the board of directors. Now they'll have 11 directors, 10 of whom are independent. He's got more than 20 years of experience operating multi-industrial businesses and senior executive roles, as well as significant legal expertise and board experience. Lead independent director, audit committee chair. There he is, Mark Blinn. And also they're going to move, or at least put it
closer. That's good call.
Move to 1-year terms, so no longer a staggered board, and they're going to put in some different metrics in their compensation.
See, it shows you that Mr. Farr
metrics
totally willing to do whatever's pro-shareholder.
Yeah,
he's pro-shareholder. That's terrific. One that we haven't mentioned that has been going straight down is Starbucks.
Say again?
Starbucks.
What about Starbucks?
It's going straight down.
Yeah, I know.
Stop.
We had that interview.
Well, I know, but it's
AJ last week.
I know.
It was all love and kumbaya, and then the stock went straight down.
Well, David, I have respect for certain CEOs.
I know. I have respect.
This stock is now down at 18 straight.
This was a $100 stock in July.
And all it's done is they lowered their growth rate a little bit. They kind of took it back up. I really think, just like, remember, Adobe lowered the growth rate. Well, a little disappointment, and now brought it right back up. Maybe this is the time to maybe raise. Maybe they've got anything, a pumpkin spice, loyalty. Give us something. Give us something. Tell me something good. Tell me something sweet.
I'm going to give you something good.
What do you got, Ring Central?
Now I'm going to talk about Xerox. Here's a name you haven't heard from me for a while. Stock's up a little less than 6%. Actually, looked to be up more than that. Remember a couple of years ago, the big fight that broke out over Xerox when the company, it had this long-term joint venture with Fuji.
Oh, my.
Where Fujifilm owned 75%, Xerox owned 25%. And Fuji was going to say, you know what, we're going to roll the 75% in. We're going to give your shareholders $2.5 billion. We're going to own 50.1% of Xerox for that. And Carl Icahn came along, and Darwin Deason, a guy who sold his company to Xerox some time back, large shareholder, and said, no way. What are you doing? Don't do that. And they won. It was a nasty activist battle. They won control of the board. They got rid of the CEO. And here we are. Take a look at the performance of the stock over the last year. We haven't talked about Xerox.
No, it's been unbelievable.
It has been strong.
We got to look a little further.
Yes. Well, but you can look at the lows from December, January period there, and you can see where the stock is now. Why am I mentioning it today? Well, big news from them and their CEO, John Visentin. They are dissolving the Fujifilm long-term partnership, the JV that's been in place since 1962. To sell everything over in that part of the world. And for selling their 25% stake, they're getting $2.2 billion. They had another $100 million from another JV that they're also selling out on. They have $2.3 billion in proceeds coming to them. The $2.2 billion, I spoke to Mr. Visentin this morning, by the way. It's up over 20 times the actual cash flow that was coming out from the JV to Xerox. You're talking a 20 multiple or more to cash flow for that. And now they've got a lot of money. What are they going to do with it? Well, some may be returned to shareholders, but Mr. Visentin also telling me as well that they're going to look to be aggressive when it comes to adjacent and perhaps within industry merger and acquisition. So perhaps they go to buy. Importantly, though, as well here, you got rid of this crown jewel lockup. You may remember from the reporting I did back when that fight was taking place. That was a key here. it was not just you do this deal, but even if you get out of it, you could never sell to another company because the Crown Jewel lockup allowed Fuji to control the intellectual property, manufacturing rights in the Asian Pacific market. It's more or less said, if you try and sell, we can stop it, and we have the right of first refusal. We can come in and do anything. It's gone now, gone. And so Xerox, Jim, does become at least a company that potentially could find itself in the midst of consolidation, perhaps as a buyer, but perhaps even as a seller. Now, I did ask Mr. Byzantine that. He said, listen, we have no plans to sell ourselves. There's no process going on of any kind. And in fact, he went on to say, we're on the attack. They've taken a lot of cost out, by the way, at the company. They have something called Project Own It, saving some $640 million this year. They're targeting $450 million in cost out next year. And then they're also talking about the future of R&D in artificial intelligence, 3D, not necessarily next year, but starting to see some return from that in 2020.
That healthcare is interesting. Look, it's still printers, it's still scanners, it's still supplies, but it's really much more of a high-tech company. Great reporting on this because a lot of people watch this stock go up and just say, well, what the hell is that? Didn't that go away a long time ago?
I know. No. Xerox is back. It's got an $8 billion market value, at least over that. Up again today. Very good year. And it is a case where the willingness of the activists to actually hang in there for a long time is being rewarded. Remember, this was not going to be the price that Xerox shareholders got if they had cashed out of that in that old deal that was resisted. It would have been below this, perhaps well below this.
You know, that is a situation where if you had stuck with it, you just made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wrote it off. I remember when they did the split, I wrote it off. I said, I don't know. I mean, is there any real value there? I thought it might be like one of these companies that has just been data general. Yeah. I mean, digital equipment. That was real. It's real.
So it'll be interesting. We'll keep an eye on shares of Xerox and the company itself, of course, that is now free from Fuji in all ways and has an additional $2.3 billion in capital. All right, let's head over to the bond pitch now, check in with Rick Santelli at the CME Group in Chicago. Rick.
Good morning, David. You know, there's so many traders, investors, armchair technicians that really don't like interest rates going up. But I think the last several sessions really do drive home the point that some of the best rallies in stocks are accompanied by rises in yield as price goes down. Look at a 3-day of 10s. We've been moving up rather aggressively. As a matter of fact, if you open the chart up to July 1st, here we come once again trying to test that all-important close at 190 you see on the chart there. Look at a 3-day of boons. Are they leading the way? Many think so. Now, China issued about a little over $4 billion in securities in euro paper. That might attribute to some of the selling pressure in boons today, but no matter how you slice it, that 3-day chart's aggressive. Open the chart up to July 1st. These are the highest boon yields, the least negative boon yields since about the third week in July. And finally, if we look at what's going on with the dollar versus the Chinese yuan, very fascinating there. The weakest on the dollar side, well, since July. And if we continue to take this home, 10s to 2s has gone from basically -5 to 22 in quick order. So the steepening of the yield curve, we could argue as to why, but at the end of the day, the equity markets and treasuries moving up together really does underpin confidence in the U.S. economy. Carl, Jim, David, back to you.
All right, Rick, well said. Let's get to Bob Pisani, see what's moving back here on the floor. Hey, Bob.
Some trade optimism helping, but we're in the middle of a very powerful cyclical rally, and that is the thing that's really motivating the markets most of all. What do I mean? Banks new highs, a lot of them. Energy, what's going on there? 3 days in a row, energy rally here. Transports rallying as well, and utilities and consumer staples, they're lagging today and on the month. Again, this is a cyclical rally. I complained yesterday, only 10% of the S&P was at new highs, with the S&P at new highs, but there's a lot of stocks, a lot of sectors just below new highs. We get another couple percentage point moves. We're going to get breakouts. Some of the big pharma companies, Glaxo, AstraZeneca, Bristol Myers Merck, 2, 3, 4% from new highs. That's close enough for me to pay attention. We have a lot of retailers that are out there, the big ones that have moved this year, the discounters, the Walmarts, Ross, Costco, TJX, all just 2 or 3% from new highs. Very, very close to breakouts. The other big breakout in the retail group, home improvements sectors, also just below new highs. Stanley's already there. Home Depot, Masco, Sherwin-Williams. You see what I mean? You get the market move up just a little bit more, you're going to get 150, 200 stocks in the S&P at new highs. We also see semiconductors. That's a market leader this year, but a lot of the big names there, Taiwan Semi, NXP, Micron, Lam Research, all just below new highs. You want to see technicians squawking a little bit? Watch the transports. We're on the verge of a breakout. We're just shy of a new high here, maybe 1% from a breakout in the transports. And you get the Dow theorists out talking about the confirmation with the transports and the industrials. Russell 2000 also about 1% from a new high. But everybody last night after the close was messaging me, what's going on with energy stocks? Since the close of October, we've had a notable rally. Big moves up, double digits in exploration and production companies and some of the service names like Schlumberger and Halliburton. This is 2.5 days of trading. So what's going on here? A lot of speculation, a lot of interesting theories about what's floating around. First off, don't forget, the rally is broadening out, and so this is the most beaten up sector, so it makes sense that they should move up a little bit. We've had a modest oil rally. That's part of this, 4 or 5% in the last few days. That's not nothing. We've also seen a cessation, likely, of tax loss selling. This was the most beaten up group, a lot of them down 20 or 30%. Some of these firms, their season ends in the end of October. There'd be a lot of tax loss selling going up into that. That stopped October 31st. That may be taking a little bit of steam away from the sellers. And you may get a little bit of a short squeeze as well. All of this makes some sense for explaining the rally. There may also be some political issues around. Elizabeth Warren, to the extent that her polls go up and down, she's been anti-fracking. That may be a factor here. Some other companies have announced capital expenditure cuts as well. The point is, pay attention to all of this, because when you see a sector like energy stocks start to rally, that's a real sign that the rally is broadening out. Carl, back to you.
Thank you very much. By the way, market services PMI, 50.6 is the lowest since 2016, but still not in contraction.
Isn't that exactly that's a great metaphor for the economy? It's not as bad as we thought, but it's slower than last year. And I think a lot of people are trying to say, well, listen, there still could be more rate cuts just because they should never have been that many rate increases. That makes me feel that way.
We got ISM at the top of the hour, too. As you just saw, later today, a pair of Wall Street heavy hitters, JP Morgan's Diamond, Bridgewater's Dalio, the man who manages the world's largest hedge fund. And check out our podcast, The Opening Bell of Squawk on the Street, at cnbc.com/podcasts, or wherever you hear them. S&P is almost exactly flat. We're back in a minute.
The Bond Report.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
There are a lot of big names on the tape today. Boeing's Calhoun, Paul Tudor Jones, and then the next two you're going to see right here on our air. Jamie Dimon and Ray Dalio coming up when we come back. Stop Trading with Jim.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the Van Fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR Network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Time for Kramer and Stop Trading.
Bless you, David. Thank you. Marriott. Okay, so Marriott reports a number that a lot of people feel is just not so great. And the stock's down $1.50 before the market opens, and now it's starting to come on. Now, conference calls later this morning. This is the key battleground stock along with Adobe, because if this company misses and yet still doesn't go down, that's a very good sign for certain kinds of senior growth stocks. So let's watch that. Could be the tell of the market today.
All right, Jim, what's tonight?
Okay, I've got FireEye, which has been a disappointing cybersecurity company, and I've got Twilio, which has been a disappointing ecosystem platform. Twilio has had an accounting issue last week, and I'm glad they're coming on, Jeff Lawson, but a lot of people are furious.
More like a calculation error, right? In their guidance?
Error. Yes, yeah. Calculation error, but it's an error, and we got to find out why. By the way, can I just say that I think Under Armour, we've done a lot of work on it. I do not think it's revenue recognition. As a matter of fact, I think that it's more innocent. I feel better after doing my work on it. You can sell the stock because the quarter wasn't that good in the predict or the forecast, but I'm minimizing now. I hate to do this, but minimizing the accounting issues. I think that the press has blown it out.
Interesting. Goldman takes it out of conviction buy, but keeps their buy this morning.
Yeah, I think that you don't like the stock because of the business, but not because of the accounting issue.
All right, Jim, we'll see you tonight. As we've said repeatedly this morning, we got exclusives with Jamie Dimon and Ray Dalio coming up. Dow's up 54.
Ski moguls.
It's another Tuesday afternoon, yet another cloudy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
On a day such as this, we pray the car won't let us down. But winter sneers, and the battery bails, the bulbs blow, the wipers wipe out. Can anyone save you? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We'll check your wiper blades, batteries, bulbs, and windscreen. We'll even send you an MOT reminder, all completely free. And we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Subject to availability, exclusions apply.
She did it! Her first word! Listen, everyone. Mama. Oh, she's lovely. Mama. Oh, did you hear that?
Oh.
Savings. Savings account.
Teaching your kids how to save may not be this easy, but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Good Tuesday. Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with David Faber at Post 9 of the New York Stock Exchange. To get a look at the markets here, Dow's up almost 50. Big hours coming up. Jamie Dimon and hedge fund legend Ray Dalio will talk everything from trade to the case for capitalism. Right now, though, ISM Services. Let's get to Rick Santelli. Rick?
Yes, we are expecting ISM non-manufacturing, and here it is, 54.7. Definitely better than anticipated, 54.7. Of course, this is an October read, and it now turns out to be the best since August, which was 56.4. But here's the important thing. 52.6 last month, September's, was the lowest since August of 2016. So to have this additional lift is psychologically beneficial. And also keep in mind, the last time we were under 50 in the service ISM was December of 2009, just to put some perspective on it. JOLTS should be out momentarily. It's not out yet. We're expecting our, 17th or 18th number over 7 million. Once it went over 7 million, it's never looked back. We'll come up with that in a bit. Carl, back to you.
All right, Rick, we got a pop in equities. Dow's up 83, 10-year up to almost 186 here. So we'll watch reaction to that very important number. In the meantime, let's get out to the Greenwich Economic Forum, where our Leslie Picker is sitting down with a very special guest. Hey, Leslie.
Hey, Carl, that's right. I'm here with Ray Dalio, the founder, chairman, and co-CIO of Bridgewater Associates. So you have an upcoming LinkedIn posting. We're just talking about this on stage here at the Greenwich Economic Forum, where you say that the world has gone mad and the system, meaning capitalism, is broken. You point to things like the wealth gap and the printing of money and monetary policy, unfunded liabilities. What are we going to do about it?
Well, let's first touch on what it is, okay? We've the necessity of trying to be stimulative when there are not other monetary policies. You can't lower interest rates anymore. There's been a lot of printing of money, and as a result of that printing of money, investors are very flush with money, and as a result, they're taking very low returns, and they also are buying dreams rather than earnings in stocks. So we've pushed that to an extreme in terms of those returns. And then at the same time, it is clogged with investors. So investors have an abundance of money. And then we also don't have much in the way of the trickling down. So we do know that we have populism of the left and populism of the right. And we're going to come into a period of time where that's going to be more challenging. And it'll have big effects on the markets, because it'll have a big effect on tax policy, but it'll also have a big effect on how we are together. So if I take those things, the large populism of the extremes and the battle between those two, and then I take the absence of effective monetary policy and the conflicts that we're having in the world, that's the nature of that market. So I believe that we would need to have smart togetherness to engineer a process by which the system works better to produce more equal opportunity and also can raise the size of the pie, because there are a lot of good investments in education. If we're underfunding education, or if we're doing a number of things that could produce high return on investment, we'll be better off. And so that's my basic perspective. And then also I'm pointing out that the pushing to negative rates, we're running out, and that's going to lead to fiscal and monetary coordination necessity. That is very dangerous. We're going to have large budget deficits, large debt. We're going to need to fund those liabilities that we have. We have pension liabilities and healthcare liabilities. That means there's going to be a lot of printing of money, and what that looks like is important. So that's what I'm saying. The system is not working efficiently, monetary and fiscal policy, and the means by which there's equal opportunities not working efficiently at a time when we have the circumstances we have.
So whose responsibility is it then to fix it? You pointed out a very scary situation here. Is it corporate America's responsibility to fix it? Is it the government? Is it individuals in this country through philanthropy? Who's going to solve this?
I think it can't be done in a fragmented way. I would say the leadership, whether it's the president or the state leaderships and governors and so on, has to take an approach where it's a come-together approach of different types of people. I'm not saying this is likely. I'm saying it's necessary, because we're going to a war-like environment. And so the smart people who are in contact with various on-the-ground needs to realize that they have to engineer it together to make sure that our economy works well. Education, for example, if you look at the education statistics, we have to improve education. It's a hell of an investment. So I think that's the nature of the beast, that it has to be top-down directed. It's got to be coordinated. It's got to be nonpartisan or bipartisan. And I don't think that's likely. I think what's most likely is that as we move ahead, there'll be more printing of money that's necessary to fund those deficits. There will be bad returns because they'll be driven down, and that the dreams of selling companies that no longer they're selling dreams, they're not selling earnings, and they're not even selling a path to earnings, that those things will have to be normalized, will have to be rectified. Time will produce a paradigm shift. There'll be a paradigm shift where those things that supported the economy and the markets in the past will increasingly be in jeopardy.
Now, in the last, few years, we've seen, obviously, on the fiscal side, tax cuts. We've seen on the monetary policy side, we're now in a lower interest rate regime. Would you recommend reversing some of those things to accomplish your goals? Do rates need to go higher from here?
No, I think the system is pretty much stuck. You can't raise rates because as a result of the stimulation, companies and various entities have a lot more debt. So it's stimulated. The borrowing and the purchases of companies back with borrowed money and all of those things have produced a stimulus. You can't, if you do reverse it, it will have the effect of causing prices to go down. Let's say if we reverse the tax cuts, okay, and we're looking at different proposals. The proposal to reverse the tax cut and change Elizabeth Warren's, for example, would result probably in about a 15% change in earnings. That would be a 15% change in the value of stocks and earnings. So each one of those things, if you reverse them, you're going to reverse some of the things that happen, and that has enough consequences. So I think you have to engineer things carefully. I think that there's lots of good investments that can be made in some things. We're going to need to raise taxes. But the question is how it's well engineered and whether we're doing that in a bipartisan and a nonpartisan basis. There are no simple answers because when we run out of monetary policy, we've run out of the stimulant that we usually can go to deal with that situation at the same time as there's this polarity.
Ray, I think we have a question back in the studio at the NYSE. Never mind. So your Pure Alpha fund lost more than 2% this year, which has largely been attributed, at least in reports, to Bridgewater's bet on government bonds. I know you've said that interest rates, low interest rates are bad, but at this point, as an investor, can you fight them? How do you?
No, I'm not trying to fight them. And by the way, it's been misattributed to what it is. We're down about 2%. We've made money in 18 of the last 18 years. We hope we make money this year, too. That's in Pure Alpha. The all-weather fund is up about 14% or something, just to be clear. And we don't ever claim to make money every year. But in any case, if you want my thoughts on markets, I'd be happy to give you thoughts on markets. But I'm not going to talk about positions.
Well, let's get your thoughts on the markets because yesterday, once again, stock markets hit a record high. They're up today, could likely close again at another record high. Do you think this is an overbought territory, or do you think that this is kind of a breakout territory for the equity markets?
There's the amount. I don't think it's a breakout, and I don't think it's particularly overbought either, because what you have is the weight of money. There's a certain amount of money out there, a lot of money. Central banks bought $15 trillion of assets and so on. So we have a lot of money. And the question is where that money goes. And if you look at the short-term interest rate and you compare what is the bond yield with that, or you compare that with what our expected equity returns are based on risk premiums, the whole returns of asset classes have gone down to very, very extremely low levels. All asset classes have gone down to those levels. So that discounting has happened, and that lower tax cuts has largely happened. And so that's the nature of the dynamic. As long as that remains the dynamic, a lot of the good things are behind us, and there's no reason to disrupt the bad things right now. At some point, though, as we're going forward, there's going to be bigger deficits, and you're going to have to fund it. And so we're dealing with almost a currency issue, longer term, in terms of what is the value of currency when those liabilities, not only the debt liabilities, but the pension liabilities or the health care liabilities, which are like debt, they're promises that have to be paid. They will either be paid by higher taxes, or they'll be not paid and defaulted on. I don't think they will be defaulted on. I think by and large they're going to be paid. But if they raise taxes too much, then it changes the nature of that economics. So, for example, profit margins have gone from about 7% of revenue to about 14% of revenue, that increase in profit margins. I don't think we're going to see that same type of increase in profit margins because it has to do with the compensation as a percentage of revenues declining. So the mere mechanics means that there's not a lot of new things that are going to push it higher in the way that it was pushed higher. And there's not a lot of negative things in that way. So the big negative will be a gradual, I think, monetization of debt when we have a lot of debt. And that'll have an implication for currencies, and it'll have an implication for capital flows. But as long as there's a lot of money trying to find something and it all competes with it, then we're going to deal with low returns going forward. But it doesn't mean price falls.
But what does that mean for excesses out there? If you have all that liquidity?
It means, of course, enormous amount. It's not efficient resource allocation in the same way, right? Because it's financial engineering again. It's like if you could borrow at negative interest rates, okay? And it's not even the borrowing at the negative rates. A lot of these deals mean that you don't even have to pay back the principal. The idea basically is, for the most part,